Here we go. Okay, I think we're all ready to go here. Sorry for being a little bit late. We were having a discussion with legal counsel about some closed session issues. I'd like to welcome you all to the June 30th, 2020 Windsor Unified School District Board of Trustees district meeting. We are live on Facebook, so if you're following there, welcome. And a reminder that we do not see your comments as we are hosting the Zoom. But we do go back and read them later, and we can also receive a message if it comes in quickly enough. And so we're also on YouTube tonight as well. So if you're following there, please join us, and hopefully this works out well tonight. At this time, I would ask Jen if she could do a roll call of the trustees. Maybe Jen has her, she's muted. There we go.
Sorry, President Heights.
Here.
Vice President Ahmad.
Here.
Trustee Adams.
Here.
Trustee Carnation.
Here.
Trustee Valenzuela.
Here. Thank you, Jen. I appreciate that. And Trustee Adams, would you lead us in a flag salute, such as it is tonight, please?
I would. Please put your hands over your heart. Everybody mute. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Item 2.3, we do not have a report out of closed session tonight, and so we will move forward to our standard regular agenda. We do have one adjustment to the agenda. I would like to ask the trustees to approve that we move item 6.9 to be following item 6.2, or 3.2, excuse me, 6.9 to move up and follow the celebrating success in 3.2 prior to public comment. At this time, we have celebrating success. And as we like to do at most meetings, we'd like to honor or celebrate some positive things that are happening in our district, whether they're student-based or staff-based. At this time tonight, I would like to make a special honor for one of our teachers and our athletic director, Jamie Williams. She will be receiving the co-curricular award this year for our staff based on her amazing job of keeping our athletic program strong and making sure that the students are not just doing well on the fields and on the courts, but also in the classroom. We've received a lot of scholastic awards from our programs this year as well. In addition to just doing a great job on campus and getting to know all the kids so well, Jamie this year was recognized by the North Coast Section and the California State Athletic Director Association as the Norm Mackenzie Rookie of the Year. So it's an award that goes to an athletic director that's within their first 3 years of taking on a school responsibility. And Jamie received that. There are over 170 schools in the North Coast Section, and she is the North Coast Section representative this year. So normally the award is presented at the California State Athletic Director Association conference that's held in early in the spring. But this year that conference was canceled due to the COVID restrictions. So we didn't get to go to have a celebration for her. She was recognized at a North Coast Section Zoom meeting, waved her hand at everybody, but it's not quite the same as getting to get up close and celebrate and have a presentation dinner. So I would like to, on behalf of athletic directors across the North Coast Section, honor her. And I would like to also open it up. I know that Pete Sullivan's with us tonight, and Amy Ziegler, and some of the high school administration, and any others that would like to comment on Jamie Williams receiving the co-curricular award for Windsor Unified School District this year.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. You know, there are so many great things I can say about Jamie, but ironically, I will pull this acknowledgement from the book that she has recently bought for all of her coaches. It's called Inside Out Coaching. And it takes you on a journey of a coach who is looking at transactional coaching, a person who serves themselves, their own ego, a quid pro quo, or a person who is transformational, who does it for the joy of it, who does it for the kids, who really understands what it means to support other people in their particular emphasis. And Jamie is one of those people. She is phenomenal in all aspects, just a great professional to work with, a wonderful teacher, and an amazing leader. I learn something from her every day, and I work with her almost every day. And it's making me a better professional to have her as part of our community. And so thank you and congratulations.
Jamie, this is such a well-deserved award, and you bring so much talent and organization and true intelligence to your role as athletic director. You've really helped unify the school with a school culture developing that we've not experienced before. And you welcome every student, not only an athlete, but a fan, a participant, somebody interested, somebody wearing school swag. You just really make everyone feel welcome at home and bring the community together. You've been instrumental in working with our leadership teacher to really ramp up the dynamics on campus and among our students. And we're so proud that you're part of our campus. I would agree with Pete. You're just a dynamic person and an incredible teacher. So your talents are not limited to your athletic director role in any way. So don't go anywhere for about another 30 years.
Jamie, at this time, would you like to make any comments about what's going on athletically at the school, or special things you've had that have represented what you're doing with your award from the North Coast section? And if we had a plaque here for you, if we were a traditional meeting, we'd have a plaque engraved for you. We will get that eventually put back up in the district office near the superintendent's office, but it'll be on the wall for you to come and visit anytime you're available.
Okay. Hello. Thank you. This is very humbling, and I appreciate the recognition at a board meeting. So many smiles on the screen. Well, first of all, I just want to say that I appreciate the opportunity to have this role, because I'm, new to Windsor. As rookie, I'm also new to Windsor, and I was advised to not just hit the ground running, but sprinting, because the athletic director role is has a lot of pieces to it. And I was starting in late August 2 years ago. So much appreciation to Pete. I'm sure he empathizes a little bit because he had it for a good month during the summer as well before I came around. And all of the admin, super supportive from my site to the other sites and to the district level, all the way up to Brandon. Thank you so much for all you've done to support athletics. I truly have so many people to thank, from community to coaches. I mean, my coaches are so grateful for every little thing that I might do. So I can go on for community members. But I do this because I was an athlete, my entire life. And sports has been a part of my life in one way or another, through my kids now and as a coach for many years. And I know what it can bring to a student's experience in school. A saving grace for me, and a desire to go to college, be the first in my family to go to college. Sports gave me that. So that's a piece of what motivates me all the time, is when I see those smiles on the kids' faces when they get to be out on the field, even during this pandemic. And it's why I do what I do. I think when we all discover our purpose at some point in our journeys, we get really excited when we learn new things and want to share that. And this was kind of like my second wind in my professional career. Since I'm in 21 years of teaching, yes, I'm that old. And it feels like I'm young again and learning so many new things. And I just love my job. I love being a part of the Windsor community. So thank you all again. And I look forward to, yes, doing this in person. I think that's it.
Eric.
Yes, thank you all. Rich, you'd like to make a comment, please?
I would. I have an interesting perspective, being that I coach with every AD that Windsor High School's ever had. And I think, selfishly, I like to think that Amy Cortez is one of the brightest ones that we've had because she hired me. And, but Jamie, you, and I've told you this, so you're probably going to get embarrassed because that's just the way you are. But we've had great athletic directors, super hardworking, dedicated to the kids. But then you bring something that's just extraordinarily special that we haven't had yet. And I've told you many times that infectious smile that you have is amazing. Many, many kids come to school every day, and sometimes that smile they get from you is the highlight of their day. So that's just one of the things that you do that's extra special. You work like, I don't know many people that work as hard as you. You start early in the morning and then you don't finish till very, very late at night, often to the sacrifice of your own family. I just want you to know that me personally, I really appreciate the example that you set. It's one to follow. I think that you completely deserve this award and many others. And I'm really proud that we at Windsor have you. You are one of our gems and one of our treasures. And somebody earlier said, we hope you're here for 30 years. I don't know why you can't be here for 35. So I'm just really excited for our kids and our grandkids that are coming up, that they're going to be able to have the benefit of all of your hard work, your dream, your vision. It's just refreshing. It energizes everybody else around you. And I'm really super thankful that somehow or other you landed in our district. And I just can't say enough, but thank you for all that you do for everybody. And it's really well appreciated.
Thank you, Rich. And I always do this. I used to do it as a coach at banquets. I forget to thank my husband, who literally sits beside me and supports me in all the hours and evenings away from my kids and my family that I spend at football games or basketball games. So I thank you.
Kind of like giving a speech at the Oscars. You have to make sure you acknowledge all the important people in your life, right?
Yeah, if I could go really quickly, Jamie, I just wanted to say that I feel so much positivity coming from you just in everything that you do. And I think that those of us who get to work in education in some way, and I just do it in my limited role as a board member, but my husband teaches too. And I think it's just such a blessing to be in this field, and it can feel very challenging, I think, at times, because this field deals with all of the challenging issues, right? But I feel like you really see it as a blessing and see yourself as being lucky to be able to do what you do. And I think that shines through in everything you do, and it makes it that much more impactful. So I just wanted to say thank you for that.
Jamie, Amy mentioned the Jaggy swag, so I put mine on so you could smile on me. 2 points. You got that sparkle, and your sparkle comes off yourself and goes into other people in the community, and it makes it a better place. And you're walking the walk when you do that. The other piece is early on, and you used a term, and I'm sorry I don't remember what it was, but it was to include athletes and students who might not have otherwise been able to participate because of limitations of one sort or another. And while our large number of several hundred kids who do the co-curricular and extracurricular activities and sports, what I truly like is you have also walked the walk to broaden the net for many other students that perhaps would not have been engaged. And for that, I am very thankful, because I think that makes our school a better place for people who may have a connection with a team or something else that the boosters support that they probably wouldn't have if you weren't there assisting and encouraging, your coaches and parents to have their kids maybe participate in a way that's magical for the kids, even if they're not the starting star. So thank you very much. It's going to be a challenging year for what you do in the next year, but we will get through this. Please bear with us, help us so that we can emerge even stronger on the other side. Congratulations.
Real quickly, Jamie, congratulations on the award. You've done a great job as athletic director. I've seen you at a lot of events over the last couple of years. I have a son that's in sports at the high school. And you have positive energy, and I see you working with the kids, being inspirational on the sidelines and with the kids in the stands. So great job. And your husband's lucky to have you. So tell him that. Congratulations.
Okay, so as I mentioned before, there'll be a plaque that'll hang near the superintendent's office in the district office. And if we were able to hand it across the computer, we would do that, but it's not the situation we were hoping for. But just as it was with the North Coast section and Athletic Director Association Award, you're being recognized tonight, and we thank you and hope for best in the future. I've been told that Facebook Live was out and YouTube was out for a little bit. We did have audio, but the video feed hopefully now will be working again. And one other mention is that during roll call tonight, we failed to mention Ava Hammelberg, our student trustee. So welcome, Ava. We see you there. We just forgot to check you off on the list, and we're glad you're here with us tonight. Thank you for being here. As was mentioned earlier, I had an adjustment to the agenda. And so this adjustment is item 6.9, which is a resolution number 2020-35. Excuse me if I look away a little bit. I'm going to read from another device here. This resolution is in honor of Brandon Kruger upon his retirement from Windsor Unified School District Superintendent. And I did notice that Brandon had already updated his Facebook status today, and that was fun to read about. So this resolution, I'm going to read through it, and then afterwards we can make a few comments if we'd like. Whereas Brandon Kruger has dedicated his professional life to public education and has served the educational communities and the students of San Joaquin, Contra Costa, Alameda, Sacramento, Sonoma counties, and Colorado for a total of 34 years. And whereas Brandon Kruger, a native of California, began his career in public education 34 years ago after earning a Bachelor of Arts degree in interdisciplinary studies, a master's degree in educational administration from National University in Sacramento, and a doctorate in educational leadership from St. Mary's College, Moraga. And whereas he began his career as an elementary school teacher and quickly rose through the ranks in public education as an elementary school vice principal, director of human resources, associate superintendent of human resources, and superintendent. And whereas he began serving the students of Windsor Unified School District as director of human resources during the 2015-16 school year, and whereas he began serving the students of Windsor Unified as superintendent during the school year 2017-2018, and whereas he has dedicated his tenure as Windsor Unified School District Superintendent to providing students with first-class programs and facilities in a fiscally responsible manner, and whereas his concern for fairness and proper resolution of issues has earned him the respect and admiration of parents, teachers, administrators, board members, his colleagues, and fellow educational leaders everywhere. And whereas Brandon Kruger's many years of distinguished public service and exceptional commitment to public education and to the children of San Joaquin, Contra Costa, Alameda, Colorado, Sacramento, and Sonoma counties, including the students of the Windsor Unified School District, have impacted countless lives, and have built bridges to so many bright futures. And whereas Brandon Kruger is retiring after 34 years of distinguished service in public education, 3 years of dedicated service and leadership as superintendent of the Windsor Unified School District. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Windsor Unified School District Board of Trustees does hereby express its appreciation to Brandon Kruger for his years of distinguished service to the Windsor Unified School District and its students, and does hereby commend Brandon Kruger for his lifetime of accomplishments and his dedication to public education. And be it further resolved that the Windsor Unified School District Board of Trustees does hereby extend its best wishes to Brandon Kruger for a happy and active retirement. Be it further resolved that this expression of appreciation and gratitude be made a part of the permanent record of the Windsor Unified School District, and that a copy of this resolution be presented to him by the Windsor Unified School District Board of Trustees, presented on June 30th and signed by all trustees of the Windsor Unified School District Board. That all being said, we'd like to give a virtual clap and appreciation to Brandon Kruger, our outgoing superintendent, on his last day of June, when we have a new superintendent, Jeremy Decker, coming in tomorrow, July 1st. And so at this time, if there are any other trustees, I've done a lot of reading. I'll save my comments for him privately later, but if there are other trustees that would like to add to what was mentioned, please do so now.
Brandon, I don't know where you are on the screen. I'm trying to find you. You did a great job for us. A lot of weird things happened when you were superintendent, but you kept us afloat. We had 2 fires. We had smoke days, COVID-19. You had to open Windsor High School as an emergency center several times for the Red Cross. Countless Zoom meetings. The town of Windsor was closed, and you kept the district afloat with your staff, meeting with the board, communicating with whoever the board president was at the time, and keeping us informed. I remember emailing you or texting you at 2 in the morning, and you would respond during those crises. So you did a great job for us, and we're sorry to see you go. We were hoping you'd stay a little bit longer, but sometimes life gets in the way. So with that, I just want to wish you well, Brandon, and you'll be missed. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, George.
Brandon, in the first full year that you were superintendent, I was helping you transition into that role, and we were learning together when I was learning how to be a school board president. I had shared with you there was one person who bumped my wife off calls who doesn't call me overly much on my cell phone, and that was you, because you were so good about emails and notices and your mantra in the office of no surprises, and having weekly notices go out to both your staff, and then there's a special one that goes out to the school board, and you would text, and if there was a phone call that came from Brandon, which was usually not between 7 in the morning and 8 o'clock at night, I knew to always take it. And you knew that whatever I was doing, whoever I was talking to, that meant that you needed to mostly give a heads up, because you had good advice and were taking care of business on the district. Thank you very much for your career. Tens of thousands of people are better because of you. I'll miss you.
Thank you, Bill. Whew.
Okay, I'll go. Brandon, I'm really going to miss you. Thank you for ending your career here in Windsor. It was really a crazy time to be superintendent. And I think that your calm and gentle personality probably was one of the greatest things that you were able to contribute to our district, because you kept things steady and you kept them calm, even in light of the most outrageous situations and just the most unpredictability that probably has taken place in a 3-year period in education, and who knows how long or ever. So I really appreciate you, and we'll miss you, but don't be a stranger, and have a lot of fun in your retirement. I know you will. Have a great time.
Thank you.
Brandon, you and I, we got a chance to talk when we had our last little meeting, and I kind of said how I felt at that point. But the things, I have learned things from you. I've learned that there's other ways to say things and still get the point across that maybe is smoother. And I appreciate that. I'm sure most of the people around me appreciate it as well. And so your impact is going to be missed. Your kind and gentle way of getting things across is something that I'm going to continue to try and implement in the way I work with folks in the public sector. And I wish you good luck in your future. You're a young person still, and you've got a lot to do and a lot of things you can do. And I'm sure that you're going to be able to contribute and continue to contribute in the area of education, maybe more on a special way that you can find special projects that will be personally fulfilling to you, and wish you all the best.
Thank you, Rich.
We're sad to see you go, but I know that you have good plans for the future, and you're going to be rested more and less stress, and being able to take care of yourself and enjoy the future that you have in front of you. A lot of mention about all the difficulties. The first difficulty was that we did reconfiguration in your first year, and you led us through that process very strongly and with a nice even keel and kept everybody grounded, and I appreciate that. I was a little skeptic about the whole situation, but you made it work well, and then on top of that, all the different events that happened through the years were very stressful, and I know you're going to enjoy your more restful, peaceful retirement, and I look forward to communicating with you and hearing more about some of your adventures and your activities in the future. So I appreciate what you've done for us, and we will miss you, but don't be a stranger. Like I said during my graduation speech, once a Jaguar, always a Jaguar. So please come back and share with us what you've done in the past.
I will.
Or what you're going to do in the future.
Thank you, Eric.
Okay, we have one more announcement. Rich Carnation wanted to share a piece of information, a little more of a somber note, but we wanted to do a recognition as well of something. Could you share with us, Rich, what you have?
Eric, do you want to vote on the resolution first? I'll make the motion.
Yes.
I'll second.
I move that we approve the resolution. I think Bill
Second.
said second.
So item first by George Valenzuela, second by Bill Adams. All those in favor of resolution 2020- was it? I forget the number.
35.
Now. 35, yes. 2020-35, please say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Aye. I don't think anybody's opposed to that one. We passed with 5-0.
I think we have to do a roll call for it, though. Ed.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, a roll call. Go ahead, Jen.
President Heights,
Yes.
Vice President Ahmad,
Yes.
Trustee Adams,
Yes, if he plays his accordion.
Trustee Carnation,
Yes.
and Trustee Valenzuela.
Yes.
Thanks.
I wonder if we can hear a word from our former
Yeah.
soup.
Well, yes. I want to express my appreciation to the board and the DAT, District Administrative and Leadership teams, all teachers and staff, and to the families of Windsor Unified School District for the opportunity to serve and lead our district for the benefit of our students. And speaking of students, I want to acknowledge and thank you for your perseverance and will to keep learning, even though it has been very different than any of us could have expected. And in my total 41 years of working, I've never seen anything like this. Maintaining focus and leadership has not been easy with all of the things that were mentioned before, the Tubbs fires during my first 90 days, followed by the death of my mother and the fatal attack of my dog, followed by smoke and air quality issues, followed by PSPS power shutoffs, followed by the Kincaid fire, leading to where we are now with COVID-19. I could not have gotten through any or all of these without the collaboration and support of my amazing team and the many people who stood together to come out stronger and more resilient. I realize through tragedy comes fear, sadness, anger, disappointment, worry, and a myriad of emotions that Only the person going through them can truly understand. I acknowledge this and understand that those few emails, phone calls, comments, and demands that I've received, especially recently, truly came from a place of care for kids, no matter how critical they were. But what kept me going and us going was being acknowledging, empathizing, and through it all, staying kind. After all, we are human, and we do not have control over many things in our path. I know that a lot of folks are working hard to plan and develop options for the immediate future of opening school while considering the possibilities of more changes and challenges beyond our control. So I leave you on my journey to retirement and better health, reminding you to continue to think how much stronger and better outcomes there are when we work together and maintain acknowledgement that everyone is feeling something, that genuine empathy is a necessity, and that kindness is critical. Those are my learned ingredients that align with the Windsor Unified School District slogan, strong schools, strong community. I wish you all the best, and Jeremy, you will do an outstanding job taking it from here. So thank you so much.
Thank you again, Brandon. We'll miss you, and we look forward to hearing from you again in the future. Thank you for joining us tonight, even though you are officially on retirement after the time period has ended for you here. But we look forward to the transition and well-being for you and your family. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I mentioned it previously. Before we move on, Rich Carnation had a special announcement he'd like to make an acknowledgement for.
Thanks, Eric. It was brought to my attention this afternoon that Steve DeLuca, one of our boosters, parents, one of those silent and steady volunteers who have been for many, many years helping with the snack shack and doing the cooking and the barbecuing and all the things. So, sitting over that hot flame, for hours on end has a toll. And he was consistently there all the time, helping, volunteering his time with whatever was needed. And, I knew him personally before he even started helping with the boosters, and just a super nice guy. And unfortunately, I heard today that he had passed away really quickly. And so he's going to be greatly missed. He's given an incredible amount of service to our kids over the years. And if you're not sure exactly who he is by name, he was the gentleman. He's quite a tall fella, big, tall, stocky man. And anyhow, his service and his presence is going to be missed. And I hope we could all maybe just take a quick little moment of silence for him. And I wish his family the best, and I'm sure we all do. But if we could just give him a moment, that would be, I think that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Rich. I don't like hearing bad news, but it's nice that we could recognize our volunteers and wish his family well, as you mentioned. Okay, so we're going to move forward in our agenda. We have the next section is public comment. We received a lot of public comments in relation to the Windsor High School quad that is being renovated. I'm going to ask those comments to not be read now, because we will be talking about that project. I've asked project manager Eric Van Pelt to include that in his report in item 5.1, I think it is. And so we will discuss that that project a little more in depth and the process that we came to find out how that may be happening. And so we'll wait to hear some of those. We could acknowledge the public comments later if need be. We do have a few other public comments. I have a note here from Karina Austin and Lisa Grocott for their continued support of North Bay Med Academy. At this time, we have not made a direct cut to any programs that are affecting students in classrooms. So hopefully that continues into the future, but we've received those comments from those two. I also have a comment and a supportive comment in relation to that from Heather Cullen. And her comment is regard to, she's alarmed to see the negative talk on Facebook regarding our principal, Dr. Collins. She's concerned about employees posting things online that they may be charged with slander or libel. And she wants to make sure that we are careful with the restoration process, the restorative circles and restorative justice situation that we've used in the past, and that we have our union rep, Pete Stefaniscos was involved, and that we'd like to include more in the future as far as restorative for the relationship, and more helping in the future to get everybody on the same page at the high school with the staff. I'm paraphrasing just for the sake of time. It's a long letter, but I wanted to share that with you, to please be careful what you post on Facebook, because it is a public thing and not always a positive situation for some people. But again, you do have your right to free speech, and I understand that, but her letter is addressed to there, and also supported by Karen Alves, commented on that letter as well. So the next item is staff association reports, item 3.4.
Eric, are you done with public comment?
Yes, those are the comments aside from the ones on the quad.
We got one from Daphne Cruz about ethnic studies. Did I only get that one?
I received a Daphne Cruz about the Committee for Change. I don't remember seeing the ethnic studies. Would you like to share that? I'm sorry, I don't have that.
Sure. No, I'm sorry. Yes, I received a comment from Daphne Cruz on her support for an ethnic studies course, or potentially incorporating ethnic studies as a graduation requirement. She talked about her experience in migrant ed and also advocated for more diverse hiring of teachers and staff.
I received that as well, Stephanie.
I may have received that. I know we received another one from her, so I may have not seen the direct. I thought it might have been a continuation of the first one. So Jen Cox is here with her hand up to clarify.
Yeah, I did send it to you all, but I have had technical issues with my email today. I think I said that to Eric earlier.
Yeah.
Some of the emails just kept bouncing back to me. It didn't matter what I did, they just bounced right back to me. So I'm sorry, Eric, if you didn't receive it. It was one of the ones I forwarded to everybody.
No problem. We were able to acknowledge that, and I appreciate Stephanie for catching that, since I didn't have it. And so we want to make sure that we are recognizing everybody that writes into us or that comments. If we were at a regular meeting, they'd have the opportunity to stand up to the podium. So we're trying to do the best we can on that as well. All right, any others that I did not get at the time? I know we're not able to comment on public notices at this time, but hopefully Daphne can get some clarity on the elective that is there at the high school at this point, and it may continue to grow in the future. All right, item 3.4 is the staff association report. I see that Mr. Stefaniscos and Mr. Freeland are both here. Do either of you have a report for this evening? Pete, I see you've come unmuted.
Yeah, so we got some guidelines from CTA about reopening schools, which the district also has. So it gives us a basis for looking at some language for a memorandum of understanding of how we navigate some, like extra duties and different schedules and that kind of stuff. I'll also be attending a meeting tomorrow with union presidents around the county to go over reopening guidelines and things like that. So, trying to compare between districts is a little difficult because we are a unique district. Our configuration is a little different. And so, I look at it as an opportunity to explore what other districts are doing, but I know that ultimately we need to do what's best for Windsor.
Thank you, Pete. We know that you'll work hard to represent your teaching staff, and Jeremy Decker, our new superintendent, comes on tomorrow, and I know he's anxious to begin working on some of those items with you as well. So we will look forward to getting together in the future on that. Brad Freeland, do you have something you'd like to share tonight with us?
Well, there's not a lot to report from the association itself. We did complete our MOUs with the district, and we will be voting on those in the near future. Last night we had our regional presidents meeting, so that's a quarterly meeting where all of the chapter presidents meet with the regional reps. And I actually received a message from one of them to say hi to Jeremy. That was Carlos. So other than that, I've said privately to Brandon, I want to say it publicly. Brandon, it has been a pleasure working with you both as the HR director and as the superintendent. And yeah, there's been a lot of bumps in the roads for all of us, but you are the ultimate professional, and I know you are respected by the classified, and you will be missed. Jeremy, you got a lot of big shoes to fill, but I know you're up to it, having worked with you in the past, and I'm very excited about you coming on board and working with you again. So other than that, probably the next board meeting, we should have more of an update on our part of the COVID at the state level, and where we are as far as the district, and what MOUs we'll need to put together to change some of the job descriptions so that we can help get through this issue. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. I know, as I mentioned to Pete, that you'll do a good job representing our classified union. You've always attended lots of meetings, and it'll be good to have that continuity for the upcoming school year with, as you mentioned, all the bumps in the road that we're struggling with from the board level all the way down to all the employees and parents and students as well. All right, item 3.5 on our agenda is the approval of minutes. We have many to approve tonight, a lot of our budget meetings and other meetings along the way. So we have the minutes of May 19th, May 20th, May 27th, May 28th, June 2nd, June 9th, June 16th. Trustees, hopefully you've reviewed some of those. If you found any mistakes or comments, please mention them now. Otherwise, I will accept a motion to approve them.
I move approval of the minutes.
A second.
Okay, so the first motion by Trustee Valenzuela, the second by Trustee Adams. Any comments or notes of change? Okay, all those in favor of approving item 3.5, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so we can move forward on reviewing the notes and getting them onto our district website. Item 4 is a list of the consideration of approval of consent action items, and I'm going to ask Vice President Ahmad to lead us through this list. So Stephanie, if you could unmute, please join us.
All right. We have item 4, as Trustee President Heights mentioned. Item 4.1 is consideration of approval of annual signature authorizations for 2020 to 2021. Item 4.2 is consideration of approval of 2-year contract with Williams and Associates, LLC. Item 4.3 is ratification of voting members for CIF and NCS for the school year of 2020-2021, including athletic director, principal, AP for the assistant principal for the athletics, and a designee. Item 4.4 is the Windsor High School new course proposals for NGSS biology, pre-AP biology, chemistry, and physics. This is the second reading. Item 4.5 is consideration of approval of Ridgeview Builders Incorporated contract for restroom addition at Maddie Washburn, room 16. Item 4.6, consideration of approval of notice of completion for the addition of the 1-story library building at Brooks Elementary School. Item 4.7 is consideration of approval of White Owl IT contract to install cameras for the Windsor High School Stadium video surveillance project. And finally, final 3, item 4.8, consideration of approval of personnel assignment order number 2020-19. Item 4.9 is consideration of approval of district warrants from March to June 2020. And finally, item 4.10, Windsor Unified School District updated acceptable use policy for students I will move to approve these items. And then if I could get a second, and then we'll open it up to discussion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Trustee Adams. Any discussion?
Yes. Yeah, can we pull 4.10 off for a future board meeting? This was the same one that was there. We were supposed to put it on for regular discussion, I believe. And I'd like to have that put on a future board meeting and not so we can discuss it.
Okay.
It was my understanding from the last board meeting that Trustee Carnation had questions that were going to be emailed to me, and I was going to get answers to them, and I did not receive an email, and so I put it back on for consent.
Misunderstood. I thought it was going to be coming back to the board. I can get those to you, Lisa, but I would like to be honest. I want the board to discuss it.
Do we have any objection from the trustees to bring that back at a later date? It'll be in August.
Do we need to have this approved before school starts, Lisa?
Ideally, yes, because the newest items, all of the other items, as President Heights indicated at our last meeting, are standard language that have been vetted by legal. I understand that Trustee Carnation is new to this language and has some clarifying questions, which I'm happy to get answers for. The new pieces really have to do with the other apps that we're now using. So Google Classroom, YouTube, et cetera, for educational purposes. So ideally, we really would have liked to have had this approved prior to the shelter in place order, but didn't know it was going to happen quite so quickly. So in answer to your question, George, yes.
And this is something that probably needs to be in the student handbook prior to students coming on campus and using the devices and things like that.
It'll be part of the Aries re-registration process, yes.
So, Rich, would you be okay with sending Lisa a list of those questions, and then if you get answers that you're not comfortable with, we could discuss those at a later time, or would you? What's your rationale there?
When's our next meeting, Eric?
We don't have an official meeting until I think the 4th of August.
A week or two.
Yeah, it's not until the beginning of August, the first Tuesday in August. So it's a long time in between.
Gotcha. Yeah, I can certainly email my questions to Lisa and we can go over it. There's just some they're not even questions, they're more policy. I don't know that we as a board want to be
you're gonna learn to say something
things.
Stop. So you're gonna learn to it's true. Stop. You want me laughing?
I'm hearing something that I don't think.
Yeah, I think we've got a little feedback. Somebody is hopefully muted now. So we have a motion from Trustee Ahmad and a second from Trustee Adams. We can vote on those motions, or we could amend it if we feel that's necessary. So I don't want to vote for everybody, but what's the consensus look like here?
Well, I'd be worried, Eric, if other board members were concerned about the language, and I think it's only Rich, and not to squash his voice, but I think we just go ahead and then he could get his questions answered. I don't think there's anything in the document that's illegal or wrong against the law. I say we just approve it and then he gets his questions answered, and if not, we could bring it back and we could amend it. But I don't see anything in the document that's wrong.
That's reasonable. If questions, or I misunderstood that I was supposed to be this. I thought when we discussed this last, it was going to come up again as a regular item, but I could have misunderstood that for sure.
Okay, so we will move forward. Again, we have a first motion by Trustee Ahmad, a second by Trustee Adams. All those in favor of approving items 4.1 through 4.10, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, hearing none, we pass 5-0 on our consent action items. And if we need to, we can move forward later with some more comments on that. We're now up to our discussion, reporting discussion section. Item 5.1 is an update on construction projects at Windsor Unified School District by our construction manager, Eric Van Pelt. I think Brian Cameron's also on the call tonight, so if those guys could unmute and put on video if they choose, we'd like to hear your report, and also the way about which, as I mentioned earlier, the way about which the high school project came to be, and some potential changes that we might want to discuss.
So good evening, board, President Heights, and superintendent and staff. President Heights, if it's okay with you, I'm going to go through the project updates, and maybe we can touch on that Windsor High School project last, and so we can go more deep into some depth on it. So I'm going to start with the camera project. The last time we met, we were in design development. We are in construction documents right now. We are preparing a bid for the middle school camera projects, and we expect that bid to be out to contractors by the end of this month. Additionally, tonight you approved the contract for White Owl. We were always planning to circle back and do the stadium once it was complete, and now that it's complete, we are coming back and installing the cameras in the stadium to take care of that area. Next is the Maddie and Brooks restroom addition. This is for the NCC classrooms. The restrooms at Maddie have been completed. Brooks, the restroom in the NCC classroom is about 75% complete. The second restroom at Maddie installation will begin this week. And all restrooms will be completed and functional for the start of school there. Kiley locker room remodel. The work is nearly complete. The electrician has a little bit of scope left to bring new power and data outlets. That's all scheduled to be done by the end of this week, and flooring repairs will be followed the next week, and that will wrap up this project. Next is the Kiley computer lab remodel to science lab. We met with the principal of Kiley and science teacher last week with the architect to go over the science layouts. The site agreed to a layout with sinks down the center of the classroom, and this is going to help with the flexibility of the classroom, so it can be used for other programs if that's ever needed in the future. The work is planned to be done over the winter break. The design is more or less complete. There's just a little bit of fine tuning left with the final set of drawings, and then we'll go out and bid this work to contractors. At Windsor Middle School, we have a structural engineer that is scheduled to walk the walkways this Thursday. This was a comment that came out of the subcommittee meeting with the Board of Trustees. They're going to do a report on structural integrity of those walkways. That is the final piece to the puzzle. We put together pricing and costs for the re-roofing and cosmetic repairs. We just want to make sure that we're not missing anything structurally, so we're having a structural engineer come in and take a look at that. The Windsor Middle School Makers Lab. The architect is ATI. They're finalizing their drawings after the review with the CTE teacher on site. We are able to keep the cost of that project under the threshold for DSA review, so that project will not go to DSA for review. It's not required. We're currently working with the CTE teacher. We believe we can schedule this work during school session. We're going to be able to isolate the area and not make too much noise. So that is going to be, once those drawings are completed, we're going to bid that out and do that during the school year. Brooks' new play structure. DSA review schedule has us completed with DSA review in July 15. Once approved, the project's going to bid quickly through the Cup bidding process. That's a little faster bidding process, and that'll allow us to get started very quickly within 2 weeks. That project is going to extend a little bit into the school year, but we have been talking to the principal at Brooks. We have a fencing plan and a layout there to make sure that's all isolated. It's in a good spot for isolation, and that will allow us to get that built really quickly for them. District-wide roofing, the Kiley roofing demo is going to be completed by the end of this week. New roofing installation expected to begin after the 4th of July holiday. The Maddie Library roof restoration will begin after the 4th of July holiday. We've only had one minor issue so far with demo, and that is there was some roofing that was adhered directly to the decking. We worked with the roofing rep and the architect, and they do not believe the delamination to the decking is substantial enough to require replacement. So that's good news. We'll be able to lay the roofing right over the existing decking. The largest project, which is the Maddie Washburn modular buildings, that is all the new classrooms at Maddie, that is currently out to bid. We were hoping to bring you a completed bid this board meeting, but we pushed it back to August 3rd, the August board meeting. I don't think it's exactly August 3rd, but we pushed it back to the August board meeting because we were talking with various modular contractors, and they were having, it's the time of the year that pre-check buildings expire with DSA, and we had a couple other modular contractors that were having trouble getting their licenses renewed because of COVID restrictions. And so all of our bidders had requested that we push back the bid so they could participate a couple weeks. And so we decided to do that to get the most competition possible. We still think we're going to be able to hit that end date by pulling together the construction schedule that we had been talking about. So that it's not going to affect the end date. It just affects a little slack that we had in the schedule there, and we're going to eat that up a little bit. But we do feel that it was the best option to get the district the most competition and the best pricing for those modular buildings. The last one, as President's Heights indicated, is the Windsor High School quad improvement. I'll give a current update of exactly where we are now, and then I'll talk about the design, just as Trustee Heights asked. So the contractor is mobilizing on site. He's getting ready to begin work on 7/5, and it is expected to be completed by the time school starts. Now I'm going to work backwards now a little bit and talk about the design process we went through with that. Earlier, closer to the beginning of the calendar year, high school administration, Amy had made a request to Lois to do something in that quad area and to put together a project to clean it up. We took some kind of conceptual hand drawings that Amy had put together, and we got a design build landscape company to put together some renderings based on those hand sketches. We went back and forth with Amy, and I know Amy was working with some students and other administration and staff, a group that she had assembled to get buy-off and buy-into the design. We went through that design process. We went to a cost estimate, and we were slightly over budget, as is typical with the first design iteration. Typically, you're a little over budget, and you got to kind of find that sweet spot where you can remove some scope or add some scope or value engineer. So we went through all of that with Amy, and she went back. I know she went back and forth with her small group of students and staff, and we came to the current design. I know there was some interest about some planter beds. That was one of the things that was kind of value engineering and removed to get us back to budget, just because it's one thing that's very easy to add at the end. At the end, should we have additional funds, or should there be some outside funding established for this? Secondly, we did include water connections for those future planters, should they be added or wanted to be added at a later date. So the water connection would be right there, reducing future costs and future issues. We did bring that to the facility subcommittee at the May 18th meeting, Zoom meeting we had. So that's my update, and that's the kind of in-depth review on the high school quad project.
Well, thank you, Mr. Van Pelt. That was a good, thorough report. We had lots of things going on in our district. some of the concerns that have been voiced in the public comments in the last several days were that the students didn't really have a lot of input, or the Committee for Change is one of the groups that's on campus that had a proposal, and they felt like they didn't get the notification along the way of how fast this project would be moving. I know that the school board wasn't even, for all of us, aware until the May meeting when we saw the first iteration of that from the architect. A lot of people may think that, you know, we have our hands in everything all the way from the beginning until the end, but as trustees, you know, we only see things when they're ready for approval or when they're ready for discussion, except for our subcommittees, as were mentioned, the facility subcommittee. So we didn't see another option besides the AstroTurf or besides the redwood trees and the faux rock and such. Can you make comment to what the possibility could be at this point, if available, to make any change, or since they're already mobilizing, are we pretty much locked into the project as was planned?
We can make changes. There's provisions in contracts to change the scope of the project, should that be requested from the board. So there are definitely provisions. We would have to check with the contractor and see what material's been ordered, what material's been paid for today, and that whole piece, and just confirm all of that is all of that, what is done and what's not, based on the new scope of the project.
Trustee Ahmad, you made a comment earlier when we were speaking that you spoke with some of the students involved. Do you have some information you'd like to share about this?
I do, but I see Lois raising her hand.
Oh,
and
I'm sorry.
I feel like she should
Lois.
go first. I do have a few comments, but I'll let Lois go.
All I wanted to say was I think we should hear from Amy Ziegler, because she is the one who was at the center of the whole process at the high school, and I think she could give a lot of information about what that process was, because it was quite detailed as far as the input and what happened with the choices.
Thanks, Lois. I will take us back to the beginning of this project that started with an idea that we were losing a great deal of trees and shade, and the health benefits from the trees in terms of cleaning air. When the solar panels went up in our parking lot, there were probably 30 trees at least that came down. So we were looking at an opportunity to replace trees and do that within the campus, where they would provide shade, because, as you know, Windsor High doesn't have a shade structure for students to have for lunches and protection from the sun. So that was really the inception of thinking about adding trees to campus. When we looked at where we might add them, we identified that we had a very large area in the middle of our quad that sat basically quite fallow. And so had, you know, the grass dies, it becomes a mud pit, and that might be an area that we could develop. In addition, we are constantly trying to keep students out of the parking lot and in campus. So last year we added a dozen new picnic tables, and they filled up the day we assembled them. So we needed more picnic tables, more seating area to accommodate students during our lunch and break times. So that started us thinking about developing the area that was between the NPR and the locker rooms. We had some ideas come through from students in regards to adding fruit trees and garden beds and a variety of trees and plants. And some of that was nixed by the maintenance department because of the concern for rodents, with fruit trees dropping, and concerns about garden beds that already don't receive a lot of care, and groundskeepers is in short supply. So we started with some designs, and we wanted to take some designs to students that had basically wasn't from zero, so that students could actually imagine some things happening. The design that we finally worked with, this is all during COVID time, so we're not We're not working in person with teams of teachers or anything like that, but just getting input back. And I worked with some of our admin team to just get ideas. We had a lot more, as Eric mentioned, we had a lot more in the plan. We had outdoor amphitheater areas. We had lots of rocks, creating outdoor classrooms. We had some suggestions about having solar powered benches that would help students recharge their devices. So there was a lot of things involved in this, as well as creating shade, the shade area, the eating areas for the students. So we walked the property with someone from the lead, I think, from Ann Bryan, to talk about this space. And there's a lot of grading issues there already. So, and we didn't want it to just be a big flat open space. We wanted it to have some interest. So there was a lot of work to put a design together. We had ideas emailed to us from students with the CFC and incorporated raised beds and areas that we could, but we wanted it to also not just be a garden. We wanted it to be an area that was welcoming for all 1,600 of our students. And we constantly tried to address the issues that the maintenance department brought up, because this area is so close to our cafeteria and kitchen, about minimizing a concern with rodents. So I know Anna spoke at a previous meeting in regards to the process of bringing this to our Senate forum, which is a cross-representation of all of our students, and seeking input from those students during this process to do that. We didn't have I would say, in comparison to, say, designing a building, there wasn't an actual architect involved. So it was just the landscape designer. So we had a few meetings, but I wouldn't say we had a dozen meetings. We were just exchanging ideas in regards to that.
Thank you, Ms. Ziegler. That's a good story of how things came about and where it began and how it progressed. I know this is bond-funded money, so the community is interested in the process, and that gave us a good indication of how the process came about. Similar to when we had climbing structures and such at most of the other school sites, this money is coming from that same part of the bond, where the high school doesn't want a jungle gym or a climbing structure. They wanted some outdoor seating area, so that's a positive representation. And again, we can't make everybody happy all the time, but we're trying to do the best we can. And going through the Senate forum, in my eyes, was a good chance of doing that. Are there other comments from the trustees? I see George, and then I know Stephanie, I mentioned her earlier that she had a comment as well.
Hi, Amy, Ms. Ziegler. Quick question. We had talked about planting trees there. That never happened. Can you tell us why? And also, I think you mentioned in your comments that the school doesn't have a structure to protect the kids when they're eating from the sun or the rain. Why didn't those two suggestions happen instead of the recommendation for the turf and what we had before us?
Thanks, George. Good questions. So in the design that we have, there are several groves of trees that will create shade. And we have worked with Brian on the build team with Van Pelt to identify trees that are because we're in destroying other parts of campus or nearby parts of campus. So we worked to identify some of the trees that are already on campus and similar to ones that were taken out, so that we have several groves of trees. So design right now has walkways coming from each direction. It has a central area that will have a W in it. That's a concrete pad that can be used for an outdoor classroom or meeting areas. That was another one of our goals, that we would increase that. We asked for some rock boulders for seating, so there would be some gathering spaces for students. We We really wanted to have the raised beds, and the design has raised beds in it. But we also understand that there's cost limitations. At one point, we actually thought that getting fresh water to the property area was going to be difficult, but it looks like we're going to be able to add some fresh water, some hose bibs, so adding garden beds at some time, and certainly welcoming native plants and pollinators and things like that in the design. The putting up a shade structure, we have the MPR, but it has, it only holds so many students. And installing a shade structure, as you know from the other school sites, is just going to be cost prohibitive because it needs DSA approval. So we were trying to work with a design and design elements that weren't going to turn us back into needing DSA approval on items that we added. Because one of the original suggestions was to include something like an amphitheater with just bench seating and help focus, to have a small outdoor stage or at least a focused area and gather the benches. But eventually we're finding that more and more things are requiring DSA approval.
Trustee Ahmad, you wanted to make some comments?
Yeah, so I have a few comments, but I'll try to keep each of them brief. And so I know I did speak with Mackenzie Keeler, who had emailed us. I think she emailed the whole board a couple different times. So I just ended up talking to her on the phone to get a sense of what was going on, what the frustration was. I think that ultimately the Committee for Change felt that they weren't really involved in the process to the extent that they thought they were going to be, and that it just went very quickly. And I think that in light of COVID and distance and Zoom, I think that all makes sense, that it's very hard to coordinate. And I really don't think that there's any blame to be placed. I think it's just doing a process like this remotely is challenging. And I know that there have been some, I guess, attacks on the board. For me, it personally doesn't bother me, because I think people are just trying to find a way to have their voices heard. And we are meeting. So it's a natural, I guess, place to channel feelings and ideas. And I also think that there's some excitement in the community about a change happening at Windsor High School, and feeling like maybe there could be an opportunity for more discussion or more consensus or collaboration in designing that area. And so I think that there's some excitement about it, and some feeling of just that even if this is the best possible option, people feel like they weren't included in coming to it. And so it doesn't feel like the best possible option, is my sense of what's happening. One comment I've heard is just that AstroTurf can be really hot, just from people's experience. So I was wondering if that could be something that we could consider just in looking at going forward. And then I know that there must be a lot of maintenance considerations, and kind of having something, and I've had conversations with people about this, about the amount of work it takes to maintain a garden. And already our school gardens, it's so hard to keep them maintained. And what would be, I think, ideal from a maintenance perspective strictly would be to have something that looks exactly the same always and requires very little upkeep. But I wonder if maybe we can find more of a middle ground and what. So I guess what I'm saying is I've thought about this, what to do going forward. And I don't know that even now the project that we've kind of come to does the things that we originally wanted it to do, which is shade. And it sounded like providing more seating for students to eat. And maybe there's a little bit more work that can be done and a little bit more collaboration. It sounds like there are a lot of people who want to be involved. So I'm wondering if this is something we can kind of postpone and go back to a committee process and bring in more input and just spend a little more time. But I mean, I feel like Trustee Valenzuela says this a lot. I'm just one person. That's just my opinion. I want to know what the rest of the board thinks about this.
Since you mentioned, I think a lot of the questions are answered by Mrs. Ziegler. I think that the kids or the students brought up some good ideas in terms of like artificial turf and how it gets really hot and it's going to affect the ozone layer when it gets thrown away. And I don't know what the answer is. I don't think putting grass there is going to help. And I think that a lot of the questions that I had were answered by Mrs. Ziegler, but I don't know what the other option would be. It sounds like there's just miscommunication or the students didn't know this was coming to us. I don't know, but I'm satisfied with the questions that I've heard asked and answered today.
If I could, a little bit. One is, I have a unique perspective in that I've seen that quad for 25 years, and everything that Amy just mentioned that had all the challenges that quad has, I think she was being nice. That quad has had even more challenges with people driving through it, mud everywhere, kids going from one side of the campus to the other through it. Even though it's rained for 10 days in a row, there's always somebody who thinks that their shoes are not going to get muddy and track it all over the school into the NPR. The reason why I'm familiar with that is because we had to go and mop all that stuff up before we'd have wrestling practice. We would fence it around for tournaments. So without wasting a ton of time tonight, I completely appreciate the folks who have wanted to have more input and think that they didn't get a chance to do it. Not that it's an excuse, but I think Stephanie kind of mentioned it with COVID going on. There's a ton of things that all of us have not been able to do or say or properly express or try to get implemented because we just don't have this new form of communication is new for a lot of us. 3 months ago, I thought Zoom was the noise I made with my grandson's little airplane. So all I can say is that I love gardening. I like all that kind of things. I'd be more than happy to help. I've got 20 yards I can donate of some of the richest compost and dirt that can grow anything that I've been putting together for my own gardens and stuff. So I'm willing to help these folks too. But what I've noticed is that the janitorial folks are correct. Well-meaning people have put things together, and then in a season or 2 or 3, the same zeal that the people who originated things is not carried forward. And they end up becoming weed beds. And we have a lot of weeds in areas that I wish we didn't have weeds. And me personally, I don't think that quad area is the best, highest and best use is to put a garden in that area. I think that there are some other locations at the high school I think that could facilitate a lot of the goals that people have expressed in their plan that I think could achieve those things. But honestly, when I first saw that kind of drawing of the quad, how they came out with it, it instantly kind of resonated with me and how it would be nice and it would solve a lot of the problems I've seen over the last 25 years. Well, not 25, but 20 in that quad, as it is continually kind of degenerated into just a dirt patch. So I'm like George said, I'm happy with, I'm satisfied with what has come about so far. The way we got here maybe could have been better, but these last 3 months, I don't think anybody could have expected much to have gotten better. The way we're limited with our communication and our ability to get together and collaborate on things. So I know the contractor is ready to get going, and I'd like to see that get done the way it is. There's always ways to go back and make minor adjustments and modifications over time. As we see fit, we can take a patch of that grass out. We can add some extra boulders. There are things that we can do over time, but and if we want to do a garden and a pretty nice garden system at the high school, I'm all for it. The thing that people have to talk about, though, is most of the time when the fruits and vegetables mature and are ready are not at the same time when kids are even in the school. So how are we going to do that? And then when kids graduate, I know that people have great, well-meaning intentions that things will perpetuate and take on. I've seen that not be the practical case, though. I can't tell you how many parents I've heard over the years go, we love this program, we love what's going on, we just want to volunteer and work forever here. And their kids graduate and crickets, and they are gone, and life takes over other things and other phases. So I believe that this would be something somewhat similar if we were to do something different or add it. But if we do want to add it, I just think the quad is not necessarily the place to do that.
I see Ava with her hand up, our student representative. I know she was a little bit involved in this process as well. If you could share some concerns or comments with us, Ava.
Yes, I know that a big concern for a lot of students was how the communication worked, even though everyone understands that at the beginning of coronavirus, no one really knew how to properly communicate over the new technology and everything. So aside from that, I know that a big concern among students, parents, and teachers is primarily around the turf, not only on whether it gets hot or not, but mainly around the sustainability and the health concerns about the gathering of bacteria, about the ozone layer and all of that. So I think a good thing would be to just address why turf was chosen and other alternatives that could be more sustainable. And then also a big thing that I know a lot of people are kind of hoping for is the ability for more community input now that we are aware that so many people care about what happens to this area on campus. I think it would be a really good idea to kind of take that support and be able to get more insight from parents, from student organizations like the Committee for Change who want to have a voice in this.
Yes, George, you have your hand up.
Oh yeah, I was just thinking that perhaps with this project already going forward, and if it's the board's pleasure to go forward with it, which I'm fine with, maybe we could commit to having the students meet with the administration and come up with another location where they could have the planter boxes or whatever it is that they want to do. We want to make sure that the kids feel supported, because what's going to happen is we go forward with this decision tonight and we say, thanks kids, thanks students for participating, but they're going to feel like, they did this work and nothing happened. Maybe there's just miscommunication. So I'm in favor of maybe they working with the staff at the school next year, and they could come up with another location that they're willing to work on and commit to, and knowing that it's going to be a student-led project, and knowing that maintenance really can't do the work that is going to be required of them. I'd be willing to support that, and I think that's kind of a compromise, but I want to hear what other people think.
Trustee Ahmad?
So I think that we should definitely look at other options too, kind of look at the whole thing a little more holistically. But I do still think that it would be feasible and a good idea to put a pause on this briefly to bring in a little bit more community input. And because people are enthusiastic about this, they're passionate. There's obviously people in the community who are involved and who have ideas about something that could potentially be better. I understand the pros of the project that's already kind of set. I understand that it's already been approved. Some things have already been set in motion. I just still don't know that that means that that's the right course to go down without taking a brief pause to look at different options. Just look at options and see, what is there an alternative to AstroTurf that could be viable and that would, I've heard that water can gather in AstroTurf too. I don't know that that's true. So is there another option that could potentially drain better? And I don't think the idea is necessarily for a food producing garden. I think it's for a drought resistant garden. So that's just one caveat to add in there, but I see Lois raising her hand again, so I'm gonna just defer to her again. But I do think I'm for pausing and then continuing once we have more feedback.
And I appreciate that. I'd just like to hear from Eric about what that could mean for the project, for the contract we've signed and the contractor, and financially what the impact might be.
So as always, we serve at the pleasure of the board, but just so you understand the impacts to the contract is, You would likely lose a portion of money on mobilization fees that they've for them mobilizing, and then we'd cancel the contract and going through another review process, depending on how long that takes, lining up next summer, and then the cost escalation that goes with waiting a year, which is I won't even guess at with the type of world we're living in right now. But typically there is cost escalation from year to year. I like I said, with the situation we're in right now, I can't even estimate it for you, but typically you would see a cost increase. Those would be the impacts to hitting the pause button.
Eric, can you also speak to the idea, the questions about the turf, and then also what, if we were to continue with the contract, to what degree could we make changes?
So we can make changes, individual changes within the CMAS agreement. So basically what we see in the CMAS agreement, we can pick from that menu of options and make those changes. And we could go from there. We could reduce scope. And if we do choose something that is not a CMAS option and we do have to bid it out, we could reduce that scope and then bid it. It really is going to determine on what that input looks like and what the changes are going to be. Regarding the turf, I think the questions that were asked regarding the turf are why it was selected and potential impacts to it. Why is it's a widely used material now for school districts because of the extremely low maintenance cost of it. And the extremely low amount of maintenance that has to be done on it on already stretched thin maintenance teams. So that is a big reason why. I mean, to speak to Trustee Carnation's points on, you don't have mud issues, you don't have issues with people damaging it. It's a very hardy material. Any other, and Lois, was there anything else you wanted me to touch on with the turf? I'm sorry.
What about it getting hot and/or holding water?
Yeah, turf does typically heat a little bit more than grass. There's no doubt about that. These newer turfs are designed with specific products that when they are reach those higher heats, you can wet them down and they cool right down, but don't stay wet. It's a pretty nifty new products, but they are permeable. The drain goes through that system, and actually the stormwater is filtered through the drainage system, which it's not now. When it's dirt, you're running unfiltered water down the storm drain system. So there is that pro versus just having dirt. But yes, it is hotter than natural grass. But that's why you have shade, because most of that heat's caused by direct sunlight.
If I can, I'll just add that right now we have an area 3 times that size or at least twice that size, maybe 3 times, that is all grass, and the students won't walk on it. They won't sit on it. They won't go on it. They think it's no step on zone. And we wanted something that would invite the students in and invite the students to feel like they could be there and use the space. And we want to get them out of the sun and into the shade for, their health. And we also had some discussions with RC and his department because of concerns of the ongoing expense of watering it and mowing it. And if it was something like a decomposed granite, there's concerns it gets tracked into the classrooms and into the locker rooms, things like that. So there was, we did discuss and evaluate the quantity of materials already. It wasn't just, one shot deciding, this is it. So I know Brian Cameron was involved in some of those discussions that we had with the landscaper as well.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing up that point, Amy. That is one point, is the water savings. That was another issue that we talked about.
Mr. Decker, you had a comment you'd like to share?
I actually just have a question, Eric. Hey, good to see you again or talk to you here.
Hi, Jeremy. How you doing?
Doing all right. So I guess I wonder what the fill is, because obviously most of the environmental, well, I don't know about most, but a lot of the environmental concern is around the fill that's used. And I know there are a lot of organic materials now. There's also materials that could cool down turf to get pretty darn close to what grass would be. What was being planned to use here?
Oh, Brian, do you know off the top of your head? I do not have a spec book in front of me. I apologize. But I can dig it up while I'm here and I can email that out to everybody.
I would anticipate that it wasn't the rubber.
It was not the rubber. It was a sustainable product. I remember discussing it, but I don't have the spec book in front of me, Jeremy. I will email that out to everybody though.
Okay. It just seems like a lot of the comments on Facebook are about the environment, and I think that's probably a relevant part of this conversation, at least.
Absolutely, and I can get back to everybody on what that is.
Okay, thank you.
One of the other aspects that people haven't factored in when they talk about how they're putting the grass in, the artificial grass, when you look at the environment and you start weighing everything out too, if you put natural gas in there, what's the amount of fertilizer we're going to use over the next 20 years? That runoff that comes along the way. As far as temperature goes, we live in a pretty mild climate. So when the sun is out, it's not until the summer is when we have the most amount of heat, which is not when the students are even going to be on campus as well. And it can be watered down to cool off if need be. But the technology in a lot of that grass now is it's changed a lot. It's not AstroTurf. It's not the artificial grass I played on in college. It's completely different. I actually drove by a guy's house in the neighborhood, and his grass looked so good, I wanted to go by and see what kind of brand, or not brand, but what it was, because I wanted to get some of my grass looking a little bit better at my house. And it was artificial, and I couldn't tell until I got really close. I took my shoes off. I'm walking around on his grass and just trying to check it out to see if it was too hot, because I wanted to know if my grandsons could play on it and whatever. My wife thinks I'm nuts, and the guy wasn't home, so it was all good. But anyhow, so a lot of the concerns that people have, I understand, but they're kind of more historical in context of how things used to be and how things were produced and what have you. That this newer stuff is not the same way. So I'm kind of like I'm where George is. I'm ready to go forward. Let them do this thing, and then because Eric, let's see, when this was this was bid during our little virus, the beginning of that. Is that correct?
Yeah, we solicited CMAS proposals and right around that time. Yes, right around the April time.
Yeah, I can guarantee you that if this bid out again now, it's going to be significantly more expensive. A lot of people were trying to get work on their books that they could count on because they didn't know what was going to happen. So a lot of contractors that I know, including ourselves, were bidding things at a very aggressive rate to make sure that their book of business had a solid amount of work in there that they could kind of count on. So we start messing around with this. I think we're going to find that this project is going to get financially twisted around pretty quick as well.
All right, so I'll make another final, I think, comment, which is I don't know where Trustee Adams and Trustee Heights are on this, but I don't know that I would have support for pausing the contract. Is it possible to get and I'm not sure that that's the best idea. I have kind of an alternative that I want to present, but I want to hear from both of you on your thoughts before I present that.
Well, I'd be very interested. I don't believe, Eric, yet we've opened it up to the public at large. You had deferred some public comment till now. Does anybody else have any other input? I mean, I've heard Ava. I appreciate very much the number of correspondence that I got. Is there any other input from the public on this before you get my 2 cents, Stephanie?
From the emails we've received, so you're just asking the public?
Oh, I'm just wondering. I'm not asking you.
I think just what we've received as board members.
Yeah. I think I don't know that the garden here now belatedly is the best solution. Whoever had made the proposal of, hey, let's commit to broader gardens other places. There's a garden back in, and I should know where it is, back in the H quad, I think, back over there in the southwest corner. I don't know that morphing this location, given its fallow period, I've had kids at that school for 11 years, and I haven't seen it as bad as Trustee Carnation, but other than Project Grad fencing and people enjoying it, I like seeing it have some usefulness. So my sense was, rather than having this be the perfect location and starting, I think commitment to perhaps look for garden locations elsewhere. That said, we may or may not have, and we're getting to this, maybe tonight, we may or may not have students, or at least students in a very different way at school. So, part of my issue, other than the mobilization cost, which is not a small thing with our tight budget, I don't know that this is urgent. So I haven't decided yet, Trustee Ahmad, about where I'm going. I do think forcing garden here and not moving forward would not be necessarily the only option. I think there are plenty of locations at the campus that could be looked at. I don't know that it has to be here. So that's sort of my sense.
And I have a similar feeling. I think many of us have talked about kind of hybrid's the new term now, a hybrid model, whether we could add some boxes later in that same area, knowing that there's water available and there's hose bibs available that they could do watering with. I know it's not the grandiose, permaculture and all that they were considering. And I love the work that they've done and the plans that they've come up with. It's just that we got the original proposal the middle of May. We were asked 2 weeks later to review it again, and then we voted on what we were presented with. We didn't have all the other options that we have proposed to us now. And knowing that people are on site ready to start on Monday, that kind of hamstrings us a little bit. I'd hate to burn the bridge on that contract and get charges for having to leave, or get this whole project pushed back an entire year potentially, knowing that at the time we were very excited about it. Maybe we're not as excited now that there may be some other options, but I think what Bill and George, Rich to some extent mentioned, and Stephanie as well, that we may be able to find some other areas on campus to do some of the projects that were proposed, and I'll defer to Lois at this time.
You're muted.
I was going back and forth so much I forgot where I was. Thank you. If we brought with every project options to the board, we would be doing this for hours. I believe we went through a very vetted, reasonable process where the high school looked at lots of options and came up with what they thought was the best. And my impression always was that we bring to the board what the committees and the background people have chosen to do. Now, I will say that there is a group that feels they weren't included, and that's not good. I'm sorry about that. But the high school worked really hard to come up with this plan. So I don't want to move forward thinking that we should bring options to the board on every single project, because that is not typically how we run these construction projects. These meetings would go on forever and ever and ever. So I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, and I don't think that we need to see options of everything. I think if the process is happening in the background and input is being contributed and it's meaningful and thoughtful, then when we get that, we're getting all of that. So we are getting all of the options having already been considered in a way. So I want to suggest an alternative approach that maybe the board would support, which is that we create some kind of task force or committee that can advise on the contract as is. I know that there are options within the contract that we could work within, kind of different stakeholders from the high school students and teachers, administrators, and but the scope would be a little bit larger, and that they would be looking at sustainable landscape design throughout campus, kind of maybe over the next year. And so this could be one piece of that, but there could also be other pieces. So other areas, there could be more of the garden or the drought resistant garden idea that I've heard. And it seems like there are some organizations that are interested in possibly supporting that too. So there could be some really interesting collaboration. So maybe that's something that the board would support.
I mean, go ahead, Eric.
I just going to say, I think that's a positive way to move forward. Since the contract's been granted and the people are ready to work on Monday, I'd hate to lose the entire project and all the work that the committee that has been involved in presenting it has done. But then we can move forward and try to do some other things in the future with the stakeholders that are involved and some outside help potentially, and different groups that have been on a petition and such that we received since we didn't know that there was the interest at this level a few weeks ago when we approved this a contract the first time.
Yeah, I like your idea too, Stephanie, about putting something together for down the road. There's a lot of planter beds already around the high school that could use a lot of love. And if I understand right, drought resistant landscaping, what have you, one, we would be saving the water that we wouldn't need to use there so much, and also drought resistant planting and the rocks and things that go with that. They also don't require a lot of maintenance either. So there's some other side benefits to doing that. And maybe they could, the freshman class might have these planters and sophomores and kind of have a nice little inter-school competition of who can take care of each planter area better, and then look at other areas too that we could expand it and make it bigger. So I like your idea, but on a go forward basis, but I think that on this issue, I think we need to go forward.
Okay, so let's kind of quickly do a straw poll here. I do want to move forward with our agenda, but I don't want to slide anybody. So.
And I did see Ava's hand.
Who's that?
I did see Ava with her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't notice that. Ava, you want to make a comment before we wrap this up?
Yes, I just wanted to because I can see there's some confusion around kind of the students' hopes for this. A garden was a possible alternative. Right now, the main student concern that I can tell is about the use of turf. So while there are many other options that might be better suited for the campus than a garden, I think the main concern right now is on the implementation of turf. So that's my main thing.
Okay, so I think we should go. Okay, Bill has his hand up there.
Yeah, not to put too big of a fly in the ointment. This is not an action item. This is a consent discussion item. So I think Trustee Ahmad's suggestion is great for direction back to staff, and we can take that up. Ava, some of your comments and concerns, great to have high school administration and student leadership get on those. But this is not agendized such that we're notice the public that we can take action. All right, I think we've heard the comments, and I think direction can go out just to add that rub in the ointment.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Bill. I think sending it back to administration and the group that's at the high school, they could meet next year or when school starts and come up with some plans and come up with something that they want to do in a different part of the campus. But I think you're right, Bill. I don't think there's any way we'd have to make this an action item to reverse it, and I don't think we're reversing it tonight.
Okay, so we had a nice robust discussion. Again, we have received lots of public comments. We could make those in our records for the future and reach out to those people if they'd like to be involved in the beginning of the next process. And so we are going to move forward at this time. I know we can't make everybody happy all the time, but we're doing the best we can to plug away at making the things move forward. So at this time, we're going to go to item 5.2, which is an update on the COVID-19 shelter in place and the status of reopening. I'm going to ask Director Lisa Saxon to lead us through a discussion on this item, please.
Sure thing, Eric. Thank you. Jen, I just want to double check and make sure that I'm able to share my screen.
I'm just going to turn that on for you, and you should be able to.
Thank you, ma'am.
There you go.
Okay, we good? Can you see that?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you. All right, so we have, as you know, if you've been following our board meetings, broken into 6 subcommittees in anticipation of the 2021 school year. The first of which is a scheduling subcommittee, with the thought that the remaining 5 committees made up of teaching and learning, general operations and childcare, health, safety and sanitizing, food and nutrition, and transportation would all be hinged and connected to what the schedule is going to be. So the scheduling subcommittee has gotten together, has been meeting regularly, and we have a schedule to plan to share with you this evening. Before I get going on the particulars, I wanted to give a shout out and extra thank you to the 30, yes, there were 30 participants on this committee, and their synergy and collaboration and focus, despite the crazy spring term that we've all been through and life-changing events that we've all been enduring, people were really able to stay focused and maintain commitment to the charge in front of us. So I just want to thank everyone for that. And then I also want to point out a special thank you to Brian Williams, the principal of Windsor Middle School, who worked with me and helped me on putting this PowerPoint together. He's responsible for formatting all of the schedule slides that you will see so that they have a common theme and pattern to them. And then he also is responsible for all of the lovely Windsor Unified student images that you see throughout the slideshow. So thank you again for Brian for helping with that. All right. Hang on just a second. There we go. All right, so our goal as we started our process over there on the left-hand side was to devise a phase 3 or hybrid schedule that brings as many students back as many days as possible for in-person learning while maintaining physical distancing, the physical distancing for state and county guidelines. The hybrid plan must also, allow for schools to fluidly move between the phases, so between 2, 3, and 4, 2 being distance learning, 3 being the hybrid schedule I'm going to share this evening, and 4 being back to in-person learning with some modifications. So we have to be ready for whatever is coming our way in the 2021 school year, and I don't believe anyone at this point has a crystal ball and knows what that's going to be. So here we go. So in terms of representation, stakeholder engagement, as you know, is important in Windsor Unified. And so we had great representation that you can see in front of you. Some of those participants wore more than one hat, hence the numbers. I'm sure Eric's adding them up right now and noticing they add up to more than 30. And there's a reason for that. So a nice balance of all of our stakeholders in the district. We began with identifying interest and then boiled it down to what the common interests of the group were, and those are what you see in front of you. So a schedule that is consistent for parents. So parents know once it's out, okay, these are my days that my student is going to be going to in-person learning, not something that's moving around or rotating or is difficult to follow. Trying to, again, maximize the possible number of days students can be on campus. Having similar schedules for households. So we were able to query and determine that About 140 of our households in Windsor Unified contain students with different last names, so probably blended families. And heading that off in advance and knowing that principals can work with that to ensure that each household will be on the same schedule so that they don't have kids going all different days of the week. We needed to acknowledge the huge heavy lift that this will involve for teachers needing to be responsible for distance learning and in-person learning for however long it might be during the school year. And so needing to build a schedule that would accommodate for that happening to continue to provide a quality education in a hybrid environment. And then the last one, equities for students. So when we take a look at our most vulnerable student populations who truly need to benefit from as much in-person learning as possible to best benefit from their educational experience, finding ways to build equity, just like if you think about LCAP, making sure students get what they need. So we basically, in a nutshell, if you think of a traditional class, so principals build master schedules and build classes at the elementary school level. We will continue to do that so we can move into phase 4 in person whenever. And we've taken that traditional class and we'll divide it into 2 cohorts. So if you see the alphabet there at the bottom, wherever the alphabet split lands in a 50-50 way, that will become how the 2 cohorts are determined at each of the sites. So half of the school will be present for in-person learning at a time. And that, again, is just the only way that we're able to maintain physical distancing is the way that that will work. So at a glance, the hybrid model is this. We looked at multiple different ways to have the 2 cohorts on the campus, one of which was 2 days in a row. There were some more downsides to that than people were willing to work with. And the other one was AM and PM, and that presented a number of logistical issues that just seemed to not be the favorite of the team. So instead, we will have students at Maddie, Brooks, Kiley, Windsor Middle School, and Windsor High School. Cohort 1 will attend in person on Mondays and Thursdays. Cohort 2 will attend in person on Tuesdays and Fridays. Wednesday will serve as the planning day, the distance day, the common planning time day, staff meeting day, etc. North Bay Met and Windsor Oaks Academy will continue with their 5-day per week in-person program. And that's simply because due to their numbers and their ratios, Forrest Harper, our new principal, was able to get his keys and get in there and get measuring, and he was able to determine that they do have the physical space to allow for continuing their current schedule, the schedule they ended with in the 1920 school year. And then NCC will also continue with a 5-day per week in-person learning program. Classes with 12 students will be divided into 2 cohorts, and that's simply based upon the physical distancing needs for that student population. So when we look at equity prioritization, which I brought up in the shared interests, we began with special day class students, our NCC students that I mentioned in the last slide, excuse me, our English learners who are emerging and somewhat developed, and then we will additionally prioritize at-risk students who are in need of more in-person learning time. Those spaces will likely be made available through the families who determine that they are not prepared to have their students participate in any in-person learning and will request full-time distance learning. That will free up some spots in the 2 cohorts to provide additional spaces for students who need more in-person learning time. So starting with Maddie Washburn, give you a quick look at how that basic schedule is firming up, knowing that there are details still to be hammered out. So now, as I mentioned earlier, transportation, food service, health, safety, sanitizing, et cetera, need to begin meeting and take a look at this. We will also need to, many moving parts, we will need to survey parents again to get a sense of how many parents, for example, would put their kids on the bus or plan to put their kids on the bus, because transportation needs to know that in order to be able to determine routes for staggered start times for temperature taking. Health, safety, sanitizing needs to work out the details around how that temperature taking is going to work as students come to campus each day. And then we will also be taking a look at polling parents around childcare needs for the 3 days a week that their students in the hybrid model will be on distance learning. Many parents, I'm assuming, will be needing to work and are going to be scrambling to find childcare. We understand that, and Lois and I have begun some preliminary conversations with ECC in taking a look at what might be possible conceptually to partner and help fill that void as much as possible. Here's first and second grade for Maddie. Then we move on to Brooks. A similar schedule for Brooks. Julie and Annette did a nice job working together on this. And here for fourth and fifth grade at Brooks. Then we go to Windsor Middle School. So basically 3 blocks a day. So Windsor Middle School students and Windsor High School students and Kiley Middle School students will still go to school 2 days a week, but they will see each set of teachers once per week in that 2-day rotation. This was part of the what seemed best for all students in the what we are calling a 1-2-1-2 schedule versus a 1-1-2-2 schedule, is more focused on the elementary grades, in that for students who are struggling, students who are more at risk, students who are more disengaged, it affords them the ability at the elementary level to not go a full week before they see them in person again. If they were on a 1-1-2-2 schedule, that would be the case. But on a 1-2-1-2 schedule, if you see the student Monday and they struggle to engage in distance learning on Tuesday and Wednesday, you're going to have that student back again on Thursday to be able to make up the difference and check back in. So the benefit is more for elementary, but I'll agree that for the benefit of families knowing which days their kids will be in in-person learning, that secondary went along with that as well. So here's 7th grade for Windsor Middle School and 8th grade for Windsor Middle School. Moving on to Kiley. So here's TK through 3rd grade. And you'll see that each site across the district has Wednesday as that common planning day. 4th and 5th grade. And then 6th through 8th grade. And I'm going through these a little bit quickly because this is more of the detail, but it's good to get the visual as well. Moving on to Windsor High School. Same idea that you saw at Windsor Middle School and at Kiley. It also affords the ability in each of the schedules, you'll notice there was distance somewhere in that Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday schedule, and obviously in addition to Wednesday. And that is due to the trailer bill language that has since come out, indicating that there needs to be live contact with distance learners even. And so we were glad to get that information in advance and to be able to build that in and not have to find it out after and go back to the drawing board. And then I mentioned earlier that North Bay Met and Windsor Oaks have been able to maintain their original schedules and will not, due to their numbers and enrollment, need to divide into cohorts.
Lisa, if I could ask a comment, I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's okay.
You mentioned at the high school and most of the other sites as well, the afternoon distance piece. Would that be considered like office hours, like some of us went when we had college, that it would be open for a teacher to provide support? Or would that be expected to be a full class meeting in Zoom or in Google Classroom or another Hangout or something like that?
So we took it to mean not optional, but necessary. And so it could be office hours. Eric, one of the experiments or one of the things we learned from the office hours concept experiment during the spring was that students didn't always take advantage of the office hours. And so if we call them office hours, we will need to create them in such a way that there is required student participation. Because again, the intent of the trailer bill language is to ensure that we don't lose students, right? That they don't slip through the cracks. And so finding ways to maintain consistent contact with them and the ability for a teacher to intervene, do a mid-course correction, whatever the case may be, affords this opportunity.
I just, the teacher in me says, well, we've got 4 blocks on Monday A or 2A on Tuesday, and there's an hour and 15 minutes each of those days. Are 4 different teachers going to be fighting over the same students? Or how do we make that work? So
you definitely will have to iron out in the teaching and learning subcommittee, which I think you signed up for, so you can help us, what that's going to look like and how we're going to make it work for everyone.
Lisa, I had a couple questions.
Yeah.
Thanks for this report. It's really insightful. One question is recess supervision for the elementary kids. Looks like you're going to have a lot of recess supervision, taking the kids out in their individual classes. Has that been talked about? Another question is, it looks like you have grab-and-go lunches for some of the schools, but for the older kids, like Windsor Middle, Kiley, Windsor High, they're going to be on campus eating. What's that going to look like? Where, how, when, why? And then the SDC kids, are they going to be going 5 days a week because those classes are smaller? Or are all these questions that haven't been hammered out yet?
No, actually, some of them have, so I'm glad you brought them up, George. So for the elementary students, for recess, as it is, teachers provide the supervision during recess. So we will do a combination of recess, but PE, so that it's more structured, so that teachers are able to ensure that the physical distancing is happening and that kids aren't just running out onto the playground like they typically would on a normal recess day. And the parent feedback that we got from that strategy was that there was a belief, though it probably won't be 100% of the people, but that there was a belief that parents would feel better about feeling like teachers are taking kids out to a structured PE/recess time, and therefore safety is really being thought about before just having them head out. The second question you asked, George, was about lunchtime. So the reason for the grab and go concept, I've been doing yard work, can you tell? The grab and go concept for elementary was simply because we were trying to get to as close to the ending distance time number of minutes consistent across the sites. And in order to do that, it cut the elementary, because they get out earlier, it cut them earlier. And so it became the new concept of, well, maybe we don't keep them on campus for lunch because it would be more challenging to keep them physically distanced anyway. We still feed them, but we give them their lunch at the end of the day and off they go. And they can eat their lunch when they get home. At the middle school and the high school, I asked the question about, well, what about those unstructured times at break and lunch, and how are we going to make sure physical distancing is in place? And I think what we have to remember is that there will be 50% of the population on the campus. There will never be the entire school population. Therefore, there are more places to spread kids out so that they can put the physical distancing pieces in place. I still think it's going to be a challenge. They're going to have to train kids. It's not going to be, smooth and easy. There will be some training to do, definitely. But that was the consensus and the feedback that I got. And then what was your third question again, George? I forgot, sorry.
Yeah, I ask them all because
I know, and then I never remember them all.
As a board member, you don't get many seconds. The SDC kids, are those kids going to be going 5 days a week because those are smaller classes and they need the support?
So SDC will go 4 days a week. And that is because the Wednesday will still be for planning, because we can't anticipate at this point how many SDC families may opt for 100% distance learning, and those kids will still need to be kept in the mix and reached out to. Any other questions I can answer? Stephanie?
I have questions. Yes. So, asking for a friend, me, but if someone has siblings who go to the same school and you want them to go on the same day, I think that there are probably a lot of people who have this situation. Will that be taken into consideration?
Yes. So as I mentioned earlier, households were one of the interests. And so if we know we can split alpha in the sections, and it's not, magically A through L and M through Z, because every alphabet, the 50% cut point isn't necessarily ending at L and starting at M, but it will be half and half. And we have 140 families in our district who have students who reside in the same household but have different last names, probably blended families. And we've already made the commitment to accommodate those families, knowing who they are, to get them on the same schedule.
Awesome. That's fantastic. And I wanted to say first, thank you for this very thoughtfully put together and comprehensive presentation. It's very, very helpful. I had a question about the first block at Windsor High School and why it's an hour and a half and the other blocks are an hour and 15 minutes. And I wondered what the purpose was for that.
Yeah, great question. So the reason for that one to be longer is we still have to figure out taking around 825 temperatures first thing in the morning. So that's part of it. And you'll notice that Windsor High School does not have a staggered start time with each grade level. And so they all are showing up at once. So we're looking into some options for that, but it's still going to take some time, right? We're not going to have everybody ready to learn at 8 o'clock because we have to get them safely into school. And then the second piece is to work on social emotional circles, things like that, to get the day started. So that period is a little bit longer. Pete, was there anything else you wanted to chime in on that? I know we were talking earlier about this one.
No, not really. I mean, it's a challenge, right? We have all kinds of lists that tell us you should do social distancing, wear masks, clean classrooms, but no model of actually how to do it and how to pay for it. And so we're going to look at what teachers can do. Some teachers won't necessarily, we're trying to struggle with where do temperatures get taken? Classroom makes the most sense, but should teachers be forming essentially a medical evaluation of students, even though it's a simple one, right? And so we do have those issues to work out. But this committee did have a lot of input. We met for, 7-8 days and tried to iron these out the best we can, and we all need to remember that the situation is very fluid. The way the virus seems to be spreading now is different than when we started, in mid-June. And so, I don't know what school looks like in August, but this was a good effort from a diverse group to put together the best schedule we can. Because, at the high school, we have a class size of 32 and 16 is the max you can really fit. And so that's half of our kids. So the question for us teachers is, what would you do with students if you only had one period a week with them? How would that change your instruction? You're going to put stuff online and then you're going to try and maximize the 75 minutes or so that you have with students. Mm-hmm. And so there's still a lot of work to be done, but I think this was a really good effort from a diverse group to try and outline what we're facing.
Thanks, Pete.
Thanks. I had one more question, which I think you already touched on, but I don't think it would hurt to touch on it again because I know it's something that is on people's minds. Thinking about next school year is childcare and how that could potentially fit into supplement for people who have to work or, they just can't be with their child during the day. Will there be an option for those odd days or the Wednesday to supplement with like ECC, Boys and Girls Club, other options? What are we looking at there?
Yeah, so Lois and I have been meeting with ECC. We've met a couple of times walking through conceptually what would it look like to partner. So What space could we make available? How many staff do you have? What could the pricing look like? Because 3 full days a week is going to be expensive.
Yeah.
And we can subsidize to some degree, and we're looking at ways in which we can do that. But it still will be expensive. So how many families could even afford the option if we were able to offer it? So that's something we're working through. And then in addition to that, I may have said this already, qualified staff and how many ECC has to, how many students can they accommodate at once? And how can they partner with us in such a way that they're not simply providing childcare, they're providing an environment for distance learning to take place 3 days a week while parents are working. So envision if we're able to pull this off, students show up with their Chromebook and they need a place and an environment that's structured and supervised and supported while they are doing their distance learning, because parents are going to need that help and expect that help, not have them, in childcare all day and then come and pick them up and take them home and then do the distance learning. It will be during the day. So we're working on it. And I know that other districts, in checking in this morning with my job alike folks at the county level, everybody is having these exact same conversations right now. How can we partner with different entities, Boys and Girls Club in some cases, to try to pull off some childcare?
Lisa, couple questions. Is it possible that we could take that, instead of having a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, have it Monday through Thursday, with Friday being the day that is kind of a prep day for a variety of reasons? One, the last 3 or 4 months, a lot of employers have realized that their employees can do a lot of work at home and get the same amount of stuff done. They can work from home. So if we had school Monday through Thursday and the prep period was on Friday, so all the kids were at home on Friday, a lot of parents could work from home. That would solve maybe one of their days that they have to try and arrange for daycare. The other part is with the teachers and everybody else. If we're only here on campus 4 days a week instead of 5, that's a lot less cleaning and a lot less other work that would need to get done and duplicated. We could clean it on Thursday, don't have to do anything until after Monday. Excuse me. And so that was the other thing. Is it possible, and I don't know, Pete, if you guys have talked about this, to where on that prep day, the other learning day, where maybe the teachers don't come to school that day. They actually, through Zoom and other methods, you guys are able to continue to do your training and prep work where you're not at the school. So I'm just trying to see, that's going to cut down that's going to cut down 20% of a teacher's fuel, wear and tear on their vehicle coming to school, if they were able to do that distance-wise. So I don't know if these are things that are possibilities.
Yeah, Rich, so there was a lot of conversation about which day should be the prep day and the pros and cons listed by the group, looking through multiple lenses and trying to land on which day made the most sense and why. And so, yes, we looked at Friday, we looked at Monday. We did not look at Tuesday and Thursday. So it was basically Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And Wednesday was the prevailing vote and the prevailing consensus, I would say, simply because it's already in our collective bargaining agreement. And so it's one less thing to have to mess with and negotiate the effects of. It also happens to be the day that when I look to my colleagues around the county, other districts are also choosing Wednesday. We're trying to coordinate to the best of our ability to work with our county office so that in the event that they're able to pull together professional development opportunities, if we all have the same prep day, there's just more efficiency and ease of getting teacher training done as well. I think there was also some concern around people kind of running out of steam, kids included, if we made Friday be the day and people just sort of dropping off and not really keeping the momentum going. Whereas if we keep it Wednesday in the middle of the week, the expectation is, no, you still are required to be here and to continue working.
Thank you.
We also have our common planning time on Wednesday, so we would still be able to utilize that. And it would be a day where teachers worked from home. But it could also be a day for elective teachers or specialty subjects to meet with smaller groups of students on campus if they wanted to. So I'm thinking like maybe a shop teacher, an art teacher, a digital media teacher. If they wanted to work with 5 or 10 kids, they could do sort of in office, on campus office hours kind of thing, and accommodate them that way with some extra time.
Any other questions? Bill?
Yeah, I want to compliment the group. I was the liaison. I attended about half the meetings. And Pete's right. I think it was 7 meetings in 10 days, 11 days. But really, there was an email that came out from Lisa for the 5 next subcommittees, which is really where the meat on the bones of this schedule get built. What does health and safety and sanitizing look like? One of the things we talked about is maybe teachers or students could help. Do we need more custodians? Do we not? How does that work when we get down in the weeds? And I think each of those groups will produce some of the details. And while we were talking earlier, I cannot imagine we do not have at least one open meeting in July. We're going to have to get feedback, and much of this feedback will come with, well, what's the cost associated to that, or the savings for that matter. One point that came from a constituent, Lisa, and I think it probably goes to the Teaching and Learning Subcommittee, is, and I think it was mentioned in closed session, or it's now, it blurs to me, that while we have 180 days in our schedule, the minutes in certain areas of instruction have been reduced. And I don't know the particulars of those. One that I know has been completely deleted for all grades is the PE minute requirements. And what does that mean? How are those PE teachers teaching? Can some of them go to the lower grades to help? Just an example, and I don't know what the answer is, but what it means, and we'll talk in the budget, we dip our toe in that in a minute, but it appears that the vast majority of our staff is going to be undisturbed next year, given some decisions by the legislature. They may be doing different kind of things, and I thought about that when we were talking about extended childcare, and if there's distance learning, there may be the ability, perhaps on a flexed schedule, for a paraprofessional or certificated teacher to be at a place where there is distance learning going on. I don't know. And so I think that level of detail and the implementation of this rough schedule is what we'll see from these subgroups in the next few weeks. So I just would plant that seed to my fellow board members that I think we're going to need, and with Superintendent Decker, who will be like the real guy in another 3 hours and 20 minutes. I could see we'll need to come in on that, because there's pros and cons and costs and benefits, and a lot of different things will be in place, including a hybrid schedule may not be available. We may find that this arc that we're on continues sadly to deteriorate, and we're back at distance learning. And what does that look like? And what's the pivot mid-school year or mid-semester? So I just wanted to share that I think the schedule group worked mightily to try and find something that worked and would give some certainty to families and parents and students. Now, the details of how that's applied and the meat on the bones is what the other 5 groups are going to need to do. So,
thanks for putting that out there. Yes, you are right. There are minimum minutes that are in the trailer bill language that are required. We took a look at all of those. Those are in the proposed schedules from each site. I didn't include them in this presentation. I didn't go that far out in the weeds for this presentation, but they are considered and they are included as part of the plan for each site. With regard to PE teachers, it is our intent that regardless of whether or not the ed code minutes are required, kids still need PE. Kids still need to be involved in physical education. And our fundamental purpose is not childcare, it is to educate. And so we would not be inclined, and it would be a huge negotiations issue to move our PE teachers into childcare or child supervision positions. We need to run an education program. That said, we're very much interested in partnering with our childcare entities in the Windsor community to see how we can provide the necessary childcare.
And I would imagine the board will be interested in getting the whole spectrum of those recommendations as we're making these decisions.
Any other questions I can answer?
No, but I have a comment.
Okay.
Okay. I was on this committee with Lisa and the other individuals who were there, including 2 of my staff members. And I just want to publicly recognize how amazing I felt that Lisa led this group and made sure that all voices were heard and took everything into account. It was extremely difficult. Her way of navigating a diverse population through hard topics to arrive to consensus. I'm sorry, my sprinklers are going on. Can you all hear that? Let me move. It's a little annoying. To arrive to consensus was admirable and something that I wish I could do. And no, I couldn't at this point in my career. I feel like our district is blessed to have her as a leader. The staff members that came from my site that were on the committee were absolutely in awe of how the committee was organized and how everything was done as conscientious as possible. So I think that's just very, very important for people to hear that this was extremely difficult. And I'm really proud to be a part of this district and really proud to work under Lisa. She's absolutely a model leader in my eyes.
Thank you, Sharon. I appreciate that.
Okay, any further comments? Of course, we have a lot more to learn and a lot more to go through in our 5 committees, and I'll be a part of a couple of those. But I think we are actually, to some extent, ahead of some of the other districts in this respect. We've made a good decision. Whether it's the right or wrong one, we don't know yet, but we've made a good decision on how we're going to proceed. And I think that's a positive, and it gives our families some information about what to expect. I don't know how we're going to share that information quite yet, if it's going out on our portal or how we're going to let families know about that. But again, we don't have to do that today, but we want to make sure that we are communicating often and making sure everybody understands the hard work we've put in. So thank you to the committee. We had, 30 people on that committee. That's a great group to get together for that many hours. And of course, more to come with these other subcommittees, but that's a great start. And I'm very proud of the work that all of you did for that. And we look forward to moving on to the other groups to find out about health and safety and instruction and transportation and all the other issues. So.
Thanks, Eric. I think it's important to point out just quickly, I think I said it earlier, but it bears repeating that this is the plan right now, right? Yeah. So once transportation gets a hold of it and all of the other subcommittees, if we run into any hiccups, it's our hope that, fingers crossed, it will be some mild tweaking and massaging. However, as with anything right now in our lives, we need to remain flexible. And in fact, that's one of the group norms that we'll push out to the other subcommittees as well. So it works until it doesn't, right? And then sometimes you might have to go back to the drawing board. So we won't be publishing this as the schedule quite yet until we've ran it through all of our other subcommittees and know that what we have in place is actually real. There might be some massaging here and there.
And I appreciate all of that. And as a physical educator, I appreciate your stance on getting the kids out there moving. And it's not just gym class, it's educational, and it's important that they move, and it's important that they understand how things work. So that's just my own little plug there for my colleagues. Okay, unless we have other comments, I think we're ready to move forward. We now are on item 5.3, the last of our report and discussion. Considering the migrant counselor job description, this is the first reading. And Lisa, you're right on stage again here.
All right, so continuing on. So we have a pretty interesting opportunity, excuse me, and that is to use our migrant education funding in a different way. So we are proposing for our 217 migrant education students in our district to dedicate one counselor, so a pupil services counselor for those students. This would be in addition to, particularly in grades 6 through 12, their alphabetic assignment, well, high school alphabetic, middle school, there's one counselor at each site, to provide the specifics with regard to migrant education requirements in the individual learning plans for students, et cetera, and a way to ensure that as a group, we are doing right by our migrant education students. We are keeping them on the front burner, and we are ensuring that through this counseling role, each of those students and their families actually have almost like a case manager to help ensure that they get through their TK through 12 academic and educational programs successfully. So that's the idea, the concept, and we needed to write a new job description to go with. And having done the math early on when we initially thought of the idea, the totality of the migrant education funds that are allotted to Windsor Unified would cover the salary and benefits for this position.
So just for the clarification of the public, I think I know the answer, but I want to make sure it's spoken clearly. This is not a new expense. This is just reallocating how we use our monies to provide services.
Correct.
Thank you. Any questions or comments about item 5.3 for Lisa or staff? Okay, we will look for this to come back as an action item in our next meeting, I assume, or maybe, and again, as was mentioned earlier, we don't have a scheduled meeting until August, but we may very likely have another meeting somewhere in the middle between now and then that we will agendize some items. So if we are ready at that time, we can put this on there as well.
Right, I'll bring it back under consent whenever next is.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we're now in the discussion and action section of our agenda. And item 6.1 is a resolution number 2020-32 that discusses classroom capacity limits and interdistrict transfer requests and such. So Lisa, you're presenting this as well.
Yeah, so this is just basically a renewal of an existing policy. It's in the form of a resolution, and it just basically removes the dates we had in place. We tried it for a year in the 18-19 school year. We adjusted the limits once, and we got it to where it was working for us. So the intent now is to remove the year so that we don't need to remember to do this annually. We can change it whenever we want to, but not have to do it annually, and to bring it back through again in our board policies.
Any comments or questions to Lisa about this resolution?
Yeah, Lisa, is this something that needs to get done right now, or is this something we can do in a month or two or three? The reason why is because I look at this, I understand both sides of this, but I also want to make sure that we're maximizing our opportunity to have kids and fill the seats, which at the same time, this may not be the best time to try and figure out how to fill all the seats. We've kind of got a 1 year waiver, I guess. I'm not sure what the right word would be, but anyhow, I know there are kids that want to try and get into the high school for sure, and some that are trying to get in the middle school. So
yeah, I think, Rich, it's really important to understand the background and why this is even coming before you. So you may have noticed in the background information on this item, this is really in response to an OCR issue that came about a few years back. Districts, in some cases, would indicate that if they were not able to accommodate a student, particularly if it was under the category of students with disabilities, that they would state the reason that they needed to increase their staffing in order to accommodate. And OCR made a ruling that that is not a reason that will work. And so the reason that can be stated instead is you can indicate as a district that you are full, you are at capacity. In order to do that, though, you can't just simply say we're full. You have to actually have a definition of what full means, and that's what this resolution achieves. It in no way restricts us to be able to, should we make the choice to increase, let's say at the middle school, we got enough students to increase by an entire section. It doesn't stop us from doing that. This resolution isn't about that. It also does not really, when we do the math at the 95% threshold for gen ed classes, we're talking about one student, really leaving room for one more student if an in-district student moves in. So we don't take all out-of-district students and then really create an overage problem for our district. So the basis, it's a may, it's not a shall. It leaves us plenty of flexibility. It's really to ensure that we can be transparent and clear about defining what full means if a family tries to come into a certain program that's impacted. That's the intent.
Okay.
I would just add really quickly, because I don't know that everyone knows what OCR is. So the OCR is the Office of Civil Rights, and it's a division of the Department of Justice. So at the federal level, so they are the entity that would come in and investigate like a civil rights violation in a school district. And so there are different examples where they've gone in, I don't know what the focus has been recently, but where they've gone into different school districts and investigated different things. So I think this was the outcome of one of their investigations, was the determination that we need to have this definition adopted to not potentially open ourselves up to being investigated by that division.
Well said, Stephanie. Yes, and thank you. I get carried away with my acronyms and I forget. I get caught all the time. So thanks for saying that.
And to Lisa's point, I think the most important word is may. That's what's in this resolution. And in many basic aid districts, that's a shall. And so I think that's, Rich, to your question, I believe that's most important. It leaves us some flexibility on whether or not we would deny or wouldn't deny. Classes at the relevant grade level may be deemed full versus shall be deemed full. It gives the district flexibility. So it makes sense.
Okay, so without further questions, I don't see any others popping up here. I would take a motion to approve this resolution.
Don't we have to vote on it, or do we have to individually?
After we get a motion, yeah.
Oh.
I will make the first motion.
Okay, I'll second.
We'll take George on that for Valenzuela for the second motion. And now, Jen, if you could read us a roll call for our resolution, please.
President Heights?
Yes.
Vice President Ahmad?
Yes.
Trustee Adams?
Yes.
Trustee Carnation?
Yes.
Trustee Valenzuela?
Yes. Lisa, on the last line of the resolution, just make sure you strike where it says version February 5, 2019.
Well, that's the original one, and then the resolution, I think, names the date at the top, the new date at the top.
So you could put a different line and say revised. Like, it just looks weird to have the two dates next to each other. But that's just my point of view. Like adopted February 5th, 2019, revised June 30,
renewed, yeah.
Something like that.
Okay, that sounds good.
It just looks weird, but I'll leave it up to you.
Thanks.
Okay, so we have a 5-0 approval on that resolution. Item 6.2 is consideration of approval of another resolution. This is 2020-33 for authorization to make transfers between fund balances and expenditures at the close of each year. Chief Business Officer Lois Standring will speak out for us on this item.
Okay, this one and the next item are both annual compliance type issues. This first one is required by the county because in the closed process, there are often times we have to do some budget transfers that make the accounts the way they need to be in order to close the books. And then
really leaving room for one more student if an in-district student moves in. So we.
Oh, that was weird.
I think Jen is watching Facebook.
That's a Facebook delay. That's what that was. That was weird.
Sorry, I didn't realize I wasn't muted. It's actually doing the presentation on Facebook. It's just delayed slightly. I'll mute myself.
So I really don't have anything else to say about this. It's something you need to approve every year. It's just part of closing out the books.
Any comments or discussion for Lois on this item?
I'll move to approve resolution 2020-33.
Second.
Trustee Adams
Second.
and Trustee Carnation. And Jen, are you still there for a roll call on this resolution?
I am. President Heights,
Yes.
Vice President Ahmad,
Yes.
Trustee Adams,
Yes.
Trustee Carnation,
Yes.
Trustee Valenzuela.
It seems as though he's stepped away and he's on mute, so we can go with a 401 unless he steps back in shortly.
Looks like there's a vision right in the left part of the screen. That's kind of weird.
Yeah, he uses one of the faux backgrounds and it changes when he sits down.
It's like a spirit over there. Or something.
Right.
He's changing,
All right, we'll move on to
his
item-
background in between the scenes.
We'll move on to item 6.3. As Lois mentioned, another of the annuals. This is a consideration of approval of educational protection account for the 2019-2020 school year. And you can explain this quickly and we'll keep going.
So there's a small, it's getting smaller all the time as our property taxes increase that we get from the county. But there's a piece of our funding that comes from sales tax. There was a proposition so many years ago that authorized this, and it's called the Education Protection Account. And we need to publicly let people know what we spent that money on. You cannot spend it on admin. So the little chart you see shows that we, both at Kiley and at the high school, we spend what we receive on teacher salaries and benefits. So that's all that this is. And I will say, when this first came into being, I think, as I was looking back on old reports, Windsor's portion was about $3 million. And now it's down quite a bit, as you can see, to just several $100,000 at each site.
Any questions or discussions for Lois on the item 6.3, the protection account? Okay, I'll take a motion to approve.
Hey, Eric? Yeah, I did have a quick question. On the Exhibit A, it says Windsor High School. Should that have been Windsor Unified School District?
No, it's just, we pick one site to use it for, just to make it simpler in the accounting system. So Windsor
Gotcha.
High School has the most teachers, so we just do it there.
Yeah, no, I just, in the description, it said the district, and then in the exhibit,
Got it.
it said the high school, so I wasn't sure. That was a typo.
Specifically at the high school.
Thank you.
Lois, we'll just make sure to add a resolution number to the document when it's signed.
There's no resolution on this one. It's just, you're just approving the report.
Oh, because I'm looking at something that says resolution number. That's fine.
Yeah, we voted on the previous when you were stepping away, so we went 401.
Oh, that's what happened.
If you'd like to,
sorry.
If you'd like to amend your vote on 2020-33, you could vote yes or no, but we went 401 as your absence.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'll vote in favor.
Okay, so we'll amend that in our notes to 5-0 on item 6.2.
And we'll add a number to it, George.
Thanks.
So for item 6.3, I need a motion and a second.
I'll move to approve item 6.3, the report.
Thank you, Trustee Adams.
I'll second.
And Trustee Ahmad. All those in favor of approving item 6.3, the Educational Protection Account Report, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Moving on to another item for Lois. This is consideration of approval of the Windsor Unified School District proposed budget for 2021. We've had a lot of discussions over this in the last month or so, and now we're on the last day when it can be prepared. So what can you share with us about the final report here, Lois?
It's so interesting. Because of timing, the budget has not changed from the public hearing. But as we all know, what we've heard from the Sacramento is things have changed quite a bit. So clearly we will have a very meaty August 45-day revise that I will begin working on. I want to wait to go to school services on the 14th to get their perspective on things. I've been reading all kinds of things. Let me say, the one thing that I added to the budget report that you probably saw as attachments is I created cash flows to show what, with the 10% cut, what the cash flows would look like. Now there'll be a very different cash flow for each of those, considering the deferrals that we're up against for next year. And I also created a multi-year for Kiley, so you could get an idea of what they look like with the 10%. But again, that will all change for 45-day revise. I did want to just go over some of the major factors of what we'll be considering now that the state budget has passed. So as you probably know, the local control funding formula is at a 0%, no COLA, but no cuts. So basically, they're saying we're funded as we were funded last year. But of course, for Windsor, what that is, that's a funding per student amount. So declining enrollment will still be a factor for us depending on what our enrollment ends up looking like for next year. So we'll have to take that into account. The deferrals, that's going to be really interesting. It's the deferrals I've been familiar with have not they never took so long to pay them back. So we'll have to take a look at what the cash flow looks like. Our reserves will help us a bit. You have to see about the legality of borrowing from the bond fund for a short time. And then if that's not a possibility, we'll need to look at what other kind of borrowing we can come up with. I heard at a CSBA budget a webinar yesterday that they actually have a collective for getting a tax revenue anticipation note. So that sort of interested me. I'm going to look into that. So we'll definitely be more on that. But the most exciting part of what this budget has, and this, I guess I should have known it was part of the negotiations. I knew they were going back and forth about what to do with CARES funding for the state, from the state. We have our original little pot, now it is little, from CARES of $276,000, I think it is, that it has some flexibility, but the state and governor and legislators came up with what they call learning loss mitigation funding. And they're basically taking the rest of the CARES funding and distributing it based on three different things: on students with disabilities, on proportion of supplemental and concentration, and on your basic LCFF ADA. And without going into detail, school services has a calculator where you can put your district in. And I put Kiley in, and Kiley at this point, and maybe the calculations will change, but if school services put them out there, I feel pretty confident in them. It's about $640,000 for Kiley, and for the district, $3.3 million. Now, what the caveat is this needs to be spent by December. So this is even a shorter timeline than I aspire, and more money. And it's restricted what it can be spent on. It's called learning loss. So the main areas that it can be spent are student learning supports, general measures that extend instructional time for students, providing additional core academic support, providing integrated services that support teaching and learning, such as staff and student and staff technology needs, mental health services, staff professional development, and student nutrition. So I think one of the goals for our committees would be in their discussions to come up with ways that this money might be used in the short time frame we have to use it to really make things better for our students, which is what the purpose is. And that's other than the fact that the special education increase that was proposed originally in January has happened. So that's good news. We'll see as it goes through SELPA what that means for our district. Okay, that's the main points I wanted to bring up. And any questions?
So Lois, knowing that the budget has to be done tonight, and we have a 45-day revise that we're allowed to change, so that's why we didn't really work on scrambling at the last minute once the vote was done at the governor's office or once the signature was signed on his new budget. We left it as it was 2 weeks ago or so, and we're going to have that 45-day time to kind of crunch our numbers and see where we are and find out how we can spend this additional money coming in. Is that accurate?
That is very accurate.
And I know that incoming Superintendent Decker is anxious to work with you. He's been very involved with his budget in his former district, and we look forward to having your fiscal minds come together to try to balance out what we can do and overcome the deficit spending potentially that we've kind of had ourselves stuck in here with decreasing enrollment. So I'm optimistic that things will look good for this year. I can't know what to expect the future year because of state income, but I think for this year, we're in a much better place than we were 3 or 4 weeks ago when we first had discussions on making drastic cuts and program cancellations and such. So I'll leave it open to anybody else that would like to make a comment. And then if none, I'll accept a motion to approve moving forward.
Hi, Eric, I have a couple comments, and I would like you to open it, please, to the public as well, because there may be public comments. I was concerned, frankly, Lois, when I understand why, but I just want to say out loud, if we approve for the budget as proposed, we're approving an $18 million loss in the district over 3 years. That's where we were on May 15th. I understand that's not where we're going to be, but that's what we're being asked to approve, and I get why that is. We are scheduled to meet for our first meeting with Superintendent Decker next Tuesday in closed session to review his goals. I would request, to the extent that he can, that he bring in what the application of CARES funding. I was at a CSBA finance seminar yesterday about $625 versus base rate special ed, and do you get more or less, and how that compares, and the offset for the employer contributions to STRS and PERS to try and true up a little bit more what the number might be. One area that I'm concerned about, I know, and I appreciate that you put it in when we were talking in the past few weeks, was a $750,000 placeholder for reopening. As we get the schedule a little clearer, as these other subcommittees begin to do their work, I'd be very interested in what that number does. Is it 750? Is it more? Is it less? That's an important coefficient because that's additional spending. One of the things that I saw, well, a couple other points, and then I'd be interested. I want to ask you about the criteria, the 27-page document that was in the materials, which show, and I don't know if CBEDS or ADA is best to look at, but it showed an estimate of 3.5, 3.3, 3.4% enrollment declines the next 3 years. So aggregate over 10%. And that doesn't change, as I understand it, from what the state budget is or the deferrals. My only other point until I get to deferrals, because I want to talk about cash flow and what you think year 2 will look like now that the legislature has pushed off a $54 million budget deficit. They pushed it off for a while. We were going into year 2021 in the first interim in December with a $3.5 million deficit spending situation and predicting $4.1 million in 2021. That's before COVID. That's back when we were going to get some more money, we thought, from the governor. So I think it's very important that everybody on this call and our community get the fact that we were millions of dollars of deficit spending before we encountered this unprecedented situation where we're not sure how we're going to open. We know we're going to have less money someday, and year 2 is probably worse. But we've made a $1.9 million in cuts, and I really hope that we can rapidly begin to refocus on what's these numbers going to look like. It was mentioned briefly I'll say one of the just really challenging things, and I had asked both of our labor leaders a couple of weeks ago, but the legislature, in my view, did not do the 1,000 local school districts a favor when they said, and the governor said it in his signing statement that he had late last night, that this provides flexibility to schools. It does in the hybrid model, I guess. But just so everyone's clear, there was some flexibility that if under the local control funding formula, if our increase was less than 2%, there's an existing state law that allows agility if we need less full-time employees. That's what the law says. And the legislature yet again said, but you don't get to use that, local folks. They then, and I think it's an accurate assessment for hybrid situations, also said, and you cannot lay off classifieds, and I'm not picking on the classifieds from because they're essential. I mean, who knows what our new structure is going to look like, but the legislature said you cannot change people in positions or that fill the class in nutrition, transportation, and the other one.
Custodians.
What was the other one?
Custodians.
Yes, and I mentioned so again, those may or may not be areas that are critically essential or that we may have flexibility, but the legislature has handcuffed our district and every other district. So as we're trying to figure out what to do, we're going to have to collaborate and cooperate even more rapidly now. All right. And so with that, I mean, I'll reluctantly support the budget as proposed. We were imposed with a fiction. What we're passing today is a fiction, but it is a structure to get us to some very hard choices in the next few weeks. And I think with deferrals, and I'd like to hear from you about deferrals, how we might manage it, what the interest rate on these trans are, because I see 2021 being far worse, the inability to have the flexibility to adjust, far worse than what we're facing now. So thank you for letting me go on the diatribe. I don't like the situation that you're faced with to have to present a budget that we know is different yesterday, but you had to get this done in the middle of last week. But we got a lot of hard work and heavy lifting to do, not knowing what is being done to our district and other districts by outside forces, but knowing it's different. And I think there's a lot of additional spending we have to make. So that's my 2 cents, and thank you for listening. I would like to have you talk about the deferrals. If we're going to have 6 months of deferrals, and I heard about February gets deferred to April or to November, and March gets deferred to October. I mean, that's tens of millions of dollars we do not have.
Well, yes and no, because about half of our income, our revenue is from property tax, so that's not being deferred. And then it's not 100% of those, it's large percentages. I think I saw 73%, maybe 87% of various months. So I'm going to have to run the numbers and see what that means. You're right, it does concern me for the following year, because all the way till November, that's a long time. That's a lot of payrolls to meet. And I'm only experienced with trans that you have for a couple of months.
Right. Well, we have one for this month, right? For June, we're getting our money next month.
Right.
What's the borrowing cost for those? Do you know?
I have not dealt with it for over 10 years, so I don't know the current cost. I'm going to reach out to CSBA because they have their pool. And then Lori Ranieri is another resource. She helps districts get trans. So we'll find out about those. But my first question is going to be if we can borrow from our bond fund, because there is quite a bit of money in there, and it might get us through, even with all the projects we have, it might get us through at least the first year.
Okay. Thank you very much for your work on this.
And can I just also say on the 750, we came up with that with a piece of it allotted to cleaning type things, but the big chunk of 500,000 was, we were talking about professional development, learning type things, devices, and that can all be covered with this CARES money.
Well, so let me just say on that, because I would support additional custodians if that's what we think we need. I can't imagine how we do this without, I heard we're getting 60 days of supplies. I don't know if that's 60 days for everybody or if that's a whole different issue. But we cut 2 PD days in the structure of the budget. And it seems to me, and again, we're not negotiating here on the thing, but it seems to me we may need 2 or 3 or 4 to orient people about what the new school year looks like. And again, if that's something, if we're if we have some CARES money and flexibility, I can't imagine, for all the time having been around for a number of the 7 sessions of the scheduling subcommittee, how long it will take to get everybody up to speed.
And we can use the CARES. We can use the CARES money for that kind of professional development. So that I would hope would be one of the uses.
And I think that that's, the sort of novel investment that we say, well, we're doing something very, very different. And it's so important that people feel supported and will invest the time and the money to get them there. So Thank you very much. I took longer than my share.
Yes, Rich, go ahead, please.
Trustee Adams, I appreciate everything that you said. I think you did a nice job surmising a lot of kind of where we're at. Last year, I wasn't going to vote for the budget deal that we put together for some of those same reasons. I thought we were spending some areas that I didn't think was going to be sustainable, and I was concerned about our budget. But I was kind of told, hey, look, if you vote for this thing, we're going to work these things out over the next year and get things squared away. And this year got worse than last year. So we can't do some of those things that we talked about last year. And the forecasts are that next year is going to be financially even worse than this year, but we're going to have the compounding effect of this year kind of rolling over into that. So I guess where I'm at is we kind of have to bite the bullet on this, but the next 45 days is going to take a lot of work, and the next year is going to take a lot of work. And I just hope our bargaining units are really ready to work with us. They asked us to be very patient with the budget in the last month or two that we've been going over a lot of these things and not propose and do certain things until we knew more. And the problem is knowing more always seems to get put off 2 or 3 weeks down the road all the time. So all I got to say is we're going to have to figure out sooner or later, hopefully sooner, that we got to get our budget squared away. We've got to get to where we can't keep deficit spending. We're going to run out pretty quick. And so I'm really looking forward to everybody putting their shoulder to the wheel and pushing along and having some goodwill goodwill expended by everybody and helping this us get this problem solved.
Okay, Bill had mentioned earlier, and I neglected to do that on the previous things. If there are any comments that we could get from the audience watching, I know we have a bit of a delay and we had little issues earlier, but if there are any very sincere or strong comments that are on Facebook or the YouTube channel, I'd be open to hearing some of those. I haven't seen anything shared as of yet, but I want to open that to the public. If you have something you'd like to make a comment about, please send that in to our helpers. And then I see Pete with his hand up here, our union leader. I'll let him go while we wait for some of those comments to potentially come in.
Yeah, I would just like to say that 3-year budgets are always some amount of fiction, right? We always increase costs because we can estimate those easily, but we don't always increase revenue. So it's not all that different than before. Yes, WDA is fully prepared for, if things go really south, next June is going to look horrible. But that's going to be across the United States of America. That's going to be every school district in every state that is going to be suffering. Right now we're trying to keep jobs and keep things going the best we can because that's what we can do right now. Right, we have an obligation to the students and to the community of Windsor to do the best we can, and by not overreacting to this, we might be better off. If we have to, if things are terrible next year, yes, everybody will know that, right? We went through budget cuts in the mid 2000s over and over and over again, and we did everything we could to try and keep it away from the classroom. But eventually, you raise class sizes and you cut services. So we're prepared for that if we have to go there. But right now, there's still too much we don't know. The combination of a vaccine and some sort of, economic rebound could change things quite a bit. Help from Washington could change things quite a bit. So we're trying to stay in a holding pattern. The state of California did it. You know, they passed a budget that relies on a lot of good intentions and wishful thinking. But they put off cuts until October. You know, they put off major decisions for a few months so we can get more information. And that's where we're at. And so it's not much different than the schedule we created or anything else. You know, this is what we know now, but we're fully ready to change if we have to.
Well, thank you for your candor and your cooperation. I know it's not easy to work with all the staff on this, and everybody has strong feelings about their positions and what they help the kids do, and we all are necessary, and so we're hoping that things can move forward as best as possible. So I'm not seeing any comments coming in at this point. So at that time, because of that, if we do get something later, we can respond to that. I'll go back and look at the Facebook feed later. But at this time, I would accept a motion to receive item 6.4, the proposed budget being sent to the county.
I'll make the motion.
Oh, go ahead, Stephanie. All right.
Oh, I so move.
Thank you, Trustee Ahmad. I will make the second motion.
Oh, okay, good.
Get you off the hook there, Bill.
All right. We're all leaning the same direction.
All those in favor of receiving the 2020-2021 budget, please say aye.
Well, Eric, if I might, I think we're not receiving it. We're approving it.
Approving it, yes.
This is our public statement of this district that's going to the county that, again, for what we know right now, Pete's exactly right. This is what we know today. Next week, we'll know something else. But yeah, to be clear, I'm sorry to...
No, that's okay. You corrected my my misreading of it. Consideration of approval of the proposed budget for 2020-2021. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, seeing none, we have a 5-0 vote.
Thank you, Lois. See you next week.
Okay, so there is some information on Facebook, but no actual questions, just comments amongst the viewers from what I see listed there. All right, we are moving forward. Item 6.5, the COVID-19 operations written report for Windsor Unified and Kiley Kalmykic Language Academy. Director Saxon, please help us with this one.
Certainly. So as you may recall, this is the report that for this year is due in lieu of our LCAP. Our LCAP will now be due in December 15th, 2020. So for this round, we were asked to write a COVID-19 operations written report. So we covered areas, as you saw in the attachment, regarding the changes to our program offerings, how we were meeting the needs of our unduplicated students, our English learners, our foster youth, and our low-income students, how we were delivering high-quality distance learning opportunities, providing school meals and while maintaining social distancing practice, and supervising, helping with providing resources to families for supervision of students during ordinary school hours. So we've been over this in many meetings as we've updated you throughout this time period. So I'm happy to answer any questions in regards to the report if there are any for either school. They're basically identical reports because, as you know, we worked together arm in arm with Kiley and all of our schools as we walked through this process starting when all of our lives changed on March 13th.
Lisa, I have a question. On the last category, which is a description of the steps taken by the district to arrange for supervision of students during ordinary school hours, I wonder if you have a sense, and I know whether the trailer bills had anything about this, and what comes to mind is this live interaction commentary that we had about distance learning versus hybrid, and whether you all have any sense about what 2021 means for the district arranging for supervision of students during ordinary school hours when we know that at least 2 of the days in the 1-2-1-2 schedule, we have distance learning going on. Has that changed at all for 2021, do you think?
You know, to my knowledge, Bill, it has not, but I will also tell you, as you well know, with the Assembly bills, Senate bills, and trailer language, it's coming rapid fire. And so this week it's been like drinking out of a fire hose to try to keep up with all of the various new indicators. But at this point, I have not yet seen anything in regards to supervision of students by school districts during normal school hours.
Yeah, I know it's a common thing that schools talk about a lot, that the school is responsible for the student from when they leave their door, when they get to school, while they're at school, and until they get back home. So that's, I think, maybe some of what Bill's leaning toward is how do we keep track of that if they're not coming at all the same hours every day? And so that's something to look at for the future. Maybe CSBA will have some guidance for us, or
do we have to? I mean, this input focuses on, we gave tools to parents, we gave some help, and I mean, there's a liability issue there. I don't know. I don't want to make too much of it, but you know, so I just wanted to plant that seed, because I think that's another aspect of one of the subcommittees should maybe look to see if that's a dynamic that we need to meet new criteria. And I absolutely agree with you, Lisa. This is changing as fast as you can read what comes from Sacramento.
Yeah, totally. So I heard 2 different questions there. So I just want to clarify. The first one I heard from Bill was in regards to the operational report about supervision of students during normal school hours. And then I thought I heard a separate question that really has more to do with how we will account for the instructional minutes during the distance learning days. And those are 2 separate, related, but separate issues. So we do have to account for the instructional minutes and build the distance learning plan to account for those minimum minutes that we brought up. Bill, I think you brought them up earlier. That will be part of the schedule that you saw as I rolled through the various slides in the report. So for each day that a student is in a cohort in in-person learning, the distance cohort is following a similar schedule in the distance plan. It will be very different than what we experienced in the spring.
And Lisa, it's a bit off topic. Maybe it kind of connects to some of the earlier conversation, but I did get a message here, we all did, from Facebook, a question that asks, what, if any, mental health resources can be provided for students and their caregivers with social, emotional, and educational challenge brought about by distance learning?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm glad that one came through. So the first and foremost priority of the teaching and learning community, or subcommittee, will be focused on social emotional learning. That will be particularly because if you think about it, the majority of students will all be coming back to a new school year and therefore new teachers, right? It won't be who they left at the end of the 1920 school year. And it's likely that we will have to establish those relationships remotely, which provides challenges, not to mention what have kids' lives been like during the summer as we've worked through this shelter in place piece. So yes, not only through classroom teachers continuing to provide the social emotional supports that we have built into our in-person learning and doing those remotely, morning meetings with responsive classroom, circles at the high school. It's built into the advisories at North Bay Met and Windsor Oaks Academy. So all of those will continue and will have to continue remotely. And then in addition to that, the counseling department, so our social emotional counselors got together during the spring term and put together a link that we pushed to the district website that makes it very user-friendly for families to reach out for support for their students. In addition to that, I am currently working through building our contract for next year with SOS, who provides us supplemental counseling services. And we are looking at the ways in which we have been able, actually Brandon has been busy assisting with procuring funds moving forward to assist with ensuring that those services can continue, because we are anticipating that they will be significant. And then I also just want to point out that I heard Lois say that one of the bullet points in the CARES money, so in that $3 million will be to really beef up to the degree that we are able with service providers to ensure that students are getting support.
I think it's important to remember too, if we look back on the schedules that were created by each school, many of the schools built in social emotional learning time specifically for this up and coming year, which is not normally part of the school day specifically on a weekly basis in the past.
Thanks, Sharon. Yes, you are correct. Thanks for the reminder.
Okay, so we have had a good discussion here. Any further questions or comments to Lisa about the item 6.5, the operations written report for COVID-19 for Windsor Unified and Kiley Kilmacak? Okay, seeing no hands raised up quickly, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve.
I'll move to approve the reports.
Thank you, Trustee Ahmad. And a second motion?
Trustee Adams did.
Trustee Adams did?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I didn't hear it. Thank you. And all those in favor of the approval of item 6.5, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposes? Okay, seeing none, we have a 5-0 passage on that one. And we will move on. Actually, at this time, I need a motion to extend our meeting. We're at 9:30. I suggest we go at least another 15 minutes or potentially a half hour to finish our agenda items.
Also move for continuance.
Thank you.
Second for 15 minutes.
15 minutes at this time, and then if we need more, we'll go further. Trustee Carnation. Okay, all those in favor of extending?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you. Item 6.6 is a resolution 2020-34 in the matter of the elimination or reduction of certain positions in the classified services and directing notifications of classified employees. Dr. Canalake will lead us into this item. Hello, Chris.
Hey, thank you, Eric. So this item is actually the next step from our June 2nd board meeting, and really a number of meetings previous to that when we were talking about the different layers of budget cuts. And so as we discussed, one of the layers of those budget cuts was really something that was in discussion long before the whole COVID-19 crisis affected our budget. And so this resolution will allow the district to notify, unfortunately, the employees that will be reduced as part of that budget cut. And so it affects, as you can see from the resolution, and again, we had talked about this at length at our budget meetings, but it was the school account clerks, the volunteer coordinators, a limited amount in clerk typist 3 and groundskeeper. So again, your approval of this resolution will allow the district to notify these employees. I would mention too that we had the opportunity, since the board approved this budget, to work with Brad Freeland and Superintendent Kruger to negotiate the effects of these layoffs. And so we were able to really have a good back and forth communication, and we're able to come up with an MOU that really set forth sort of how this would proceed and how employees would be able to navigate these budget cuts going forward, or these position cuts. So is there any questions that I can entertain?
I think we all knew that this would be coming to us. We've had a discussion about some of these services and these positions. So if there are no questions or comments, we can look for a motion to approve the resolution.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Trustee Valenzuela.
I'll second
it.
Go, Rich.
Rich
I'll second.
on the second. And if we can do a roll call from Jen, please, to do our resolution 2020-34.
President Heights?
Yes.
Vice President Ahmad?
Yes.
Trustee Adams?
Yes.
Trustee Carnation?
Yes.
Trustee Valenzuela?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Jen. So we have a 5-0 vote. And Dr. Canlake, you can move forward with finalizing those notices, and we will hope to get back to full speed at some point. But right now we have those cuts to this area, and we'll see what happens in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Item 6.7 is the Windsor Middle School and Kiley Language Academy textbook adoption proposal for science. Director Saxon.
My goodness, are you ladies still awake? It's been a long haul. Thank you for your patience. So I am thrilled to not only announce that Windsor Middle School and Kiley have been through a process together this year around the adoption of next generation science standard aligned materials. And for the first time, maybe at least in my tenure at the district office, Windsor Middle School and Kiley are both recommending adoption of the same program. With a little bit of a twist between the two. So this evening we have Carrie Barnes, who is an 8th grade science teacher at Windsor Middle School, who will be joining us. And Carrie has been involved. Oh my goodness, Carrie, you started on that committee like 7 years ago, right? The one at the Berkeley down Lawrence Hall of Science.
I believe it was at least 7 years.
Yes. She's been a long time doing this work, and the Amplify publisher is connected to that work, which is exciting to see. And then also this evening with us is Gabby Mendoza, who is an 8th grade science teacher at Kiley, and will speak on behalf of the Amplify program for Kiley. So I'm going to share my screen really quickly because Gabby had a couple of slides she wanted to reference in what she had to say. And then Carrie will let you come behind and wrap up Windsor Middle School's input. Okay, Gabby, you are on.
All right. So good afternoon or evening. Hello to everyone. So definitely looking at curriculum, when we went into this process, it's a very lengthy process. And we were really looking at the standards and how they had shifted since their adoption. So definitely one of the things that Amplify does well is that they always start off with a phenomena. And if you were to look at the NGSS standards, it's always starting, or it's always asking us, what's your hook? How are you going to engage? What is the everyday experience that students already have that we can bring into the classroom? And this is what Amplify does very well, which is simply just doing or gathering the phenomena of it. So these are simply just some examples of how you take NGSS standards and you create a phenomena. One of the things that our department has done is trying to create a local phenomena for Windsor. And so we've done a lot of work. We've gone to a lot of trainings at SCO where we can modify and enrich all of the phenomenons that are currently at Amplify to making it a better experience for students. And a richer learning experience that they directly see the impact of that phenomena in their everyday lives. I think you can go to the next slide.
Goodness, it did it again. Hang on a second.
No worries. Excellent. So one of the things that we were looking at in Kiley is definitely looking at the CAS testing. We have piloted and then we also we piloted that test. So looking at the different formats of that test and what students might have to encounter in doing that test. So Amplify definitely has some simulations that students get to mess around with, and it's very similar to what we see on the CAS testing. And one of the things that I always felt, and we as a department always felt were lacking, is those hands-on experiences where students can definitely get those experiences to be able to navigate a completely different space, especially for CAS testing. So looking at Amplify that has the simulations, and also having the simulations in Spanish, because we're a dual immersion, so we were really focused on how well is the Spanish translated. Are the simulations in Spanish? They are now in Spanish. When we first piloted, not every single simulation was in Spanish. Now they are. So definitely looking at that to be able to make sure that students have those experiences before them testing for CAST and being successful in knowing how to navigate those tools.
Thanks, Gabby. Any questions for Gabby and Kiley before we move on to Carrie and Windsor Middle School? Seeing none. Okay, Carrie, take it away. What would you like to add from the middle school's perspective?
Well, Gabby did a really great job of describing Amplify. I can't really add much to that other than I can add to the process. Some of our staff went all the way out to Sacramento and sat in a warehouse and had all of the curriculum from a warehouse in Sacramento laid out in front of us. And we spent all day looking through and kind of comparing the curriculum side by side. And it was a very difficult task. But, so many of them were just rehashed old material. They just took old books and they made a digital cartoon out of it and slapped it up on a TV or allowed a student to slip in a disc, almost like it was kind of archaic a sense. We really appreciated all the work that Amplify has also done with us. They've worked really hard and shown us all their tools and have been really helpful in our piloting as well. I have to say, we've decided to not do an integrated model, but we are going to do a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, more of a standard, because it fits our staff tends to move from 6th to 7th or 7th to 8th. And so we have a little bit different staffing issue. So we've decided to go to a discipline-specific model of Amplify, and we feel like it's really does a great job at teaching the science as well, just like Gabby alluded to.
Very good. Any additional questions from board members for either of these ladies?
Yeah, thank you both and to your administrations for collaborating and having a funnel that goes through a similar science program as you're feeding into our 9-12 high school. I mean, when Lisa was just saying, we don't know that that's happened before, I'm thinking, gosh, why not? I mean, on these areas that are technically specific that you can do it in science. So thank you both for that. Appreciate your patience in hanging around for 3 hours too.
Yeah, so just really quickly, Bill, in answer to your question, the why not has been traditionally, Kiley's choices have been more limited because they need the materials in both languages, and publishers are really getting on the ball now with producing materials that are offered in both languages. And so it allows us to be able to be together more frequently. Hopefully this is a sign of the future.
Great.
Okay, any further questions before we make a motion?
A super quick comment, just thank you for the presentation, very informative, and I'm excited for the new curriculum.
Good. Okay, I will make motion to approve item 6.7, the middle school and Kiley textbook adoption for science. Can I receive a second motion?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Rich. And all those in favor of approving this item 6.7, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, you'll get your new books, ladies. Congratulations. Yay. And on a very similar note, we're going to go to item 6.8, which is Windsor High School's textbook adoption for chemistry and physics.
Right.
We
So
saw this earlier.
Sorry, Eric. Keeping us moving. So you saw and approved this evening the next gen courses for Windsor High School. So now it's time to start purchasing textbooks that align with that new coursework. So again, this evening, Christina Sashin, speaking for all of the Windsor High School Science Department as their department rep. I hope she's still glad she chose this role this year. She's been pretty involved in representing. So this evening we have before you chemistry and physics by Pasco. Both have been piloted. Both are recommended by our Windsor High School chemistry and physics teachers. And Christina is on hand to answer any questions you may have regarding those materials.
I feel like I should recuse myself from this one.
Give a thumbs up.
I heard that they are very good.
Christina, what's the biggest thing that excites you about these new textbooks and the new? Help us up. You're taking us out tonight. What?
So these
one.
were already piloted by the chemistry and physics teachers, and they really, really loved using the textbooks. They used it basically all last year, so they felt that they got, a lot of the units and everything basically covered that they were looking for in a new book, because the other ones they're pretty old. So we definitely need new textbooks.
Great, thank you.
And from what I've seen, they have a very strong online component, and that lends itself to the distance learning that you did and more into the future, obviously, as we keep going. So that's a positive as well.
Yes.
Thank you for sticking with us.
Yes, any further questions before we vote to approve item 6.8? Okay, I'll receive a motion for item 6.8, the high school textbook adoption proposal for chemistry and physics.
So move.
Thank you, Trustee Adams. Second motion?
I'll second it.
Trustee Carnation. All those in favor of approving item 6.8, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Okay, high school gets the new textbooks as well.
Outstanding. Just do it,
Thank you for
Christina.
being with
Thank
us. Good luck in the future with those books.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Christina.
Okay, and we have already done item 6.9 as that was moved forward in our agenda. The routine information, I'm going to recommend pushing any of that out unless I hear otherwise. We have had a lot of conversations tonight. We're at our 9:45 deadline here. If there's something very important that someone would like to share, I'll ask about that. But items 7.1 through 7.6 are just kind of a standard procedure for us.
My only ask was that we take the list that's now 7.5, that handful, 6 or 7 things where we put placeholders and talk about them in the future, and ensure that that's woven into our initial goals conversation with Superintendent Decker next Tuesday. I think that's a good thing to say. There's a handful of things on there, Jeremy, that we look at and we try and say, hey, some big, some small. So that's my only point, Eric.
That's a positive thing to mention. I appreciate that. And we may need to adjust our calendar. Normally, school boards and districts shut down pretty much all of July and kind of have fewer meetings. But with all of the things coming about with distance learning and reopening and all the budget situations, we may need to add a meeting or two in there that's open session and has an agenda written with it. So I will work with Jeremy as I'm board president, and I'll take recommendations from the rest of the trustees to work on setting that after we have our goals meeting on next Tuesday. So that being said, I will take a motion to adjourn this evening.
I would so move. Oh, go. Come on, Rich. Wake up.
Bill Adams and Rich Carnation, motion to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. I don't think anyone's probably opposed, but I need to ask. Okay, so we will adjourn tonight. Thank you all for joining us on Facebook and YouTube. We will go back later and review some of the comments and hopefully gain some insight from that. And we will look forward to scheduling another meeting. Otherwise, we will see you in August.
And Brandon, fair winds and travel safe.
I know. Brandon's still here. Bye,
Take care,
Brandon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brandon. We'll talk soon.
Take care.
Yes.
All right, bye.
Bye, guys.
Have a quick word with the trustees before you all sign off.
I think we're on Facebook, though. That's the only thing.
I just asked Chris to
Oh, okay. Okay.
so-
Well,
Do you want me to stay, Jenny, or go?